Chapter 152. In the dining hall of the Balarax Academy, Dorm 302 once again held a celebratory feast for Ron. This time, he defeated Hefels, and the second place was already set in stone. There was still the last match tomorrow. If they won, Dorm 787 would be the champion. If they lost, it didn't matter, as the second place would be preserved. By the way, everyone, I have something important to announce. Just when everyone was drunk, Fatty suddenly stood up and said loudly to everyone. Everyone was reading a pornographic novel. They all looked up at him. This Fatty always liked to play pranks. What did he do on such a happy day? Manny's pair of beautiful eyes were full of drunkenness. Hee, second fifth brother, what did you do this time? You have something to announce? Well, let me guess, you don't want to announce that you want to lose weight, right? Ha ha ha, several people in dorm 302 laughed in a friendly manner. Of course not to lose weight. Fatty glanced at Lantry. He was a little nervous, but he still said, Karachi and Karachi are together, what? Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Fatty to suddenly say this. With his usual joking character, they couldn't tell if it was true or not. The dining table quieted down. I said I like Karachi and I'm already with her. Fatty stuttered and finally made himself clear. Karachi, who was also at the dining table, was blushing. Her shy little face kept burrowing into Manny's arms. As the elder brother, Lantry's mouth was wide open. He had a meatball in his hand, but he didn't eat it. The meatball fell into the bowl, making a crisp sound. Fatty was a little flustered. He was indeed in love with Karachi. This matter had been hidden from everyone, most importantly from Lantry. Originally, this matter wasn't a big deal in other dorms. It was normal for men and women to have feelings for each other under the same roof. It would be abnormal if it didn't happen. The bad thing was that Fatty and Lantry were good brothers, and Karachi was Lantry's little sister. After the two fell in love, they didn't dare to tell Lantry. Today, Fatty finally said it out loud. This matter was related to Karachi's reputation. This was no trivial matter. Aurora's smile gradually faded, and she looked at the Fatty with a serious face. Fatty, this joke is not funny at all, Manny said. Fatty, you drank too much. Ron asked, Fatty, is this true? I'm warning you, don't spout nonsense. Fatty knew that he was in trouble when he saw Lantry's expression. However, he had made up his mind today. He puffed out his chest and said, It's true. It's absolutely true. You have no say in this matter. Manny rolled her eyes at Fatty. She patted Karachi's soft back and said, Sister Karachi, is this true? Karachi looked at Fatty, then looked at her brother. Finally, she nodded with a red face. Everyone was in an uproar. They didn't expect Fatty to be serious. Although Karachi's appearance wasn't the best, she was still very pretty. She gave off the feeling of a little sister next door. The key was that she was amiable and kind-hearted. She was a good girl. When she stood next to the wretched Fatty, the two didn't match at all. Because Karachi's strength was low, there was almost no one in the academy who pursued her. In the end, she ended up with Fatty. Everyone couldn't help but wonder what kind of luck Fatty had. He actually managed to pursue such a pure girl like Karachi. Langsam burst out into laughter as he told Lantry, That's a good thing, Lantry, congratulations. This is great news, Lantry. Congratulations. His roommates gave him their blessings. However, these blessings were like needles in Lantry's ears. Suddenly, without any warning, Lantry stood up and pounced on Fatty. Fatty was stunned. Lantry landed a heavy punch on the Fatty's flabby face. Lantry's punch was infused with battle chi. The Fatty's face was bleeding, and one of his teeth was knocked out. Everyone was stunned. Fatty and Lantry were wrestling with each other. Don't, stop, brother, don't. Karachi was stunned. She immediately rushed over and stood in front of Fatty. She anxiously said, Don't hit Fatty. I was willing, Everyone in dorm 302 tried to stop her. Ron and Lantry immediately pulled the two apart. "Let go of me. I want to beat this guy to death," Lantry roared. He struggled and looked at Fatty with murderous eyes. Lantry tried to pull him back, but he couldn't. Fatty didn't say a word. He hung his head as if he had done something wrong. Karachi stood in front of him like a chicken, her face full of stubbornness. The dining table was overturned by Lantry's chi. The food spilled all over the floor. The scene was a mess. At this time, the school staff in the dining hall heard the commotion and came over. As soon as he entered, he asked, "What happened?" Fighting in the school's dining hall was common. The school involved would be dealt with seriously. "It's nothing. One of our companions drank too much. You can go out first," Ron said bluntly. The staff of the academy naturally recognized Ron, one of the semi-finalists. Looking at the mess on the ground, they hesitated for a moment. This, Ron understood. He immediately said, "I will compensate." The staff nodded and turned to leave. The room was full of broken bowls and plates. The soup flowed and the dishes were all over the floor. Lantry stopped struggling. His eyes were murderous as he stared at Fatty. Fatty lowered his head without saying a word. Karachi sat beside Fatty. She just cried and didn't say a word. Everyone in dorm 302, including Ron, looked at each other. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. His best brother had messed with his sister. It was hard to explain. After a long time, Lantry's lips moved. He coldly said, "Fatty, from today onwards, you are no longer my brother." After that, he ignored everyone and slammed the door. The celebration banquet ended on a bad note. After Lantry left, Aurora glared at Fatty and said, "Even if you are in love with Karachi, don't say it out loud. You have to consider Lantry's feelings." Lantry doted on his sister the most. Once, when his sister was bullied by others, he went to argue with the other party more than once. He came back with injuries all over his body, and it was Aurora who went to seek justice for him. Lantry only had one sister. It was normal for him to be nervous. Fatty wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said unhappily, "He is always like this. It doesn't matter when I say it. But I didn't expect his reaction to be so intense," everyone thought. His best brother messed with his most beloved sister. It would be strange if he didn't react violently. Manny looked at Karachi, who was sobbing, and couldn't help but ask, "Karachi, do you really like him?" Karachi raised her teary eyes and nodded. "I was scared. I didn't dare to tell my brother," Manny sighed. "Lantry has a fiery temper. It's hard for him to accept it all at once." Karachi sobbed and said loudly, "What's wrong with me liking Fatty? Why should he care about me?" Aurora glanced at the fat man and comforted him. "Lantry is just worried about you. Everyone knows that the fat man is a playboy." Fatty raised his voice and said, "I'm serious about Karachi." Aurora obviously didn't believe him. "You say that to every girl, right?" Fatty was anxious. He swore and swore, "I'm serious this time. If I'm playing around, I won't look for Karachi. Isn't that cheating my brother?" Manny also said to Aurora, "I think he's serious. Look, Karachi also likes Fatty, although I don't know what she likes about him." Aurora sighed, looked at Ron and said, "Ron, go and persuade Lantry. I know your words are effective." "He'll listen to you," Ron nodded. In the corridor outside dorm 302, Ron saw Lantry squatting on the ground and scratching his hair in frustration. Ron hesitated for a moment and walked over. Lantry turned around and saw that it was Ron. He took a deep breath. "You're here." Ron nodded. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to persuade you." Ron didn't intend to hide it and said directly. Lantry sneered. "Are you helping that fatty too?" "No." Ron looked up and said seriously, "Don't forget, Karachi also likes Fatty." Lantry stared at Ron with red eyes. "You also know that Fatty is a sweet talker. How can I believe him? But this is Karachi's idea. As her brother, you can only bless her, not interfere." Ron said calmly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely powerful. Lantry was silent. After a long time, he said faintly, I don't have any prejudice against Fatty, but I only have one sister, Lantry sighed. My parents were mercenaries. When I was 10 years old, they were gone. Karachi and I lived with each other since we were young. She was only 8 years old then. When we were young, because our family was poor, we were often bullied. Karachi was very beautiful since she was young, and some nobles came to flirt with her. I fought with them many times because of this, and almost got injured. Once, when we were being bullied by those nobles, a powerhouse passed by and saved us. He gave us a sum of money and left. At that time, we thought that as long as we became powerhouses, no one would dare to bully us. So we came up with a plan and brought the money directly to the Ballarak's Academy. It just so happened that the academy was recruiting students, so we entered. Lantry smiled, but his smile was full of bitterness. I didn't expect that after coming to the academy, I and Karachi couldn't avoid the fate of being bullied until we met you. Lantry smiled at Ron. I'm different from the others. At that time, everyone thought you were a useless necromancer. The first time I saw you, I knew you were very strong. I didn't have any basis, it was just a kind of intuition. The strong confidence you have is not something you were born with, but rather, it's supported by powerful strength. Your arrival was like a bright light that dispelled our darkness. After you became the leader of the Skull Gang, no one dared to do anything to us. After a long time, Lantry said seriously, if Karachi had to choose a husband, I would hope that it would be you. Hearing this, Ron's face turned red. He stammered, although Fatty is a bit of a playboy, he is still a good person. I believe that he will be good to Karachi. Besides, Ron said seriously, Karachi is not only your sister, she is also our sister. I don't dare to say anything about others, but at least I will take care of her. If Fatty fails her, I will be the first to punish him. TSK? You call her sister? Lantry scolded with a smile. You should call her elder sister. Karachi is older than you. Ron was speechless. Chapter 153. After calming down Lantry's emotions, Ron turned around and saw Aurora standing there. Aurora smiled and said, Ron, let's take a walk together? Lantry understood and smiled. Then I'll take my leave. He then turned around and left. Where are you going? Ron asked after Lantry left. Anywhere. Aurora shrugged and smiled. Let's take a walk outside the academy. Ron nodded and walked out of the academy's gate with Aurora. Ballarak City was particularly peaceful at night. The magic lamps were as bright as the stars, and a cool breeze was blowing, making everyone feel comfortable. Aurora and Ron strolled in the night. No one spoke first. The two of them walked without saying a word. After a long time, it was Aurora who broke the silence first. Ron, your injuries are better, right? Yeah. Ron nodded. With Rum's healing, I'm much better now. Aurora sighed. Tomorrow, we'll have a duel with the number 1 dorm in Ballarak's Academy, room 787. Win or lose, it's all worth it. Ron, you don't have to put too much pressure on yourself tomorrow, Ron nodded. Yeah. Aurora said, Ron, when you first stepped into room 302, I thought you were the same as those necromancers. After knowing that you'd offended the Heifels, I wanted to protect you, Aurora smiled. Later, it turned out that my worries were unnecessary. Not only are you strong, you're even stronger than I thought, Ron smiled bitterly. I didn't expect them to assign me to dorm 302. You're right. Indeed, they all look down on necromancers. That's because true necromancy magic has disappeared for 100,000 years. The necromancy magic that's popular now is actually a misinterpretation of necromancy magic. That's why it's like this, I know. True necromancy magic is very powerful. You're a good example, Aurora said with a smile. But what I don't understand is why such a powerful necromancy spell would suddenly disappear. Haha, I really can't figure it out. Ron lowered his head and said after a long time, I don't know. I'm also looking for the answer. Aurora smiled, revealing a myriad of amorous feelings. Ron looked at her in a daze. Although Aurora was not a top beauty, she was still very attractive. For Ron, she was much more realistic than Shea and Kadena, who were unattainable. Seeing Ron staring at her in such a daze, Aurora was secretly happy but also a little angry. Who would stare at a girl like that? She said angrily. Why are you looking at me like that? Ron quickly came back to his senses and looked a little embarrassed. Looking at Ron's embarrassed expression, Aurora giggled and reached out her hand to gently tap his forehead. Idiot, Ron felt that his brain was not enough. Aurora was sometimes happy and sometimes angry. It was hard to tell what was going on. Suddenly, Aurora had already walked away in large strides while he was still standing there in a daze. This time, even Hamelin, who was in his soul state, could not stand it anymore. He could not help but remind him with a smile, Ron, you're really an idiot. You don't even know that a girl likes you, ah? Ron seemed to wake up from a dream. Aurora likes me? Ron was only a 16-year-old child with a simple mind. His mind was basically devoted to cultivation. He was still in the state of puberty and did not know anything about the relationship between a man and a woman. In the past, Ron lived with Grandpa Zaley. Grandpa Zaley was a beggar, so it was impossible for him to teach him anything. He also did not have any contact with him. After hearing Hamelin's words, he came back to his senses. Then Grandpa Hamelin, what should I do? The ignorant youth was somewhat at a loss. His face became hot as if he had a fever. Hamelin's grandfather smiled and said, Of course you should chase after her and then grab her hand. After that, you'll have to take care of yourself. Oh. After hearing Hamelin's words, Ron responded and immediately chased after her. Aurora, wait for me. Ron grabbed Aurora's hand and felt as if he had been electrocuted. He was so nervous that his heart was beating wildly. Fortunately, Aurora did not shake off his hand. Otherwise, he would have to find a hole to hide in. Aurora's hand was gently held by Ron. Feeling the sweat on his hand, her heart was filled with sweetness. She thought to herself that this idiot was finally enlightened. Aurora, I like you. Ron was no fool. He finally mustered up the courage to confess. Yes. For a moment, Aurora's heart was blooming with joy. A kind of joy emerged from the bottom of her heart and instantly occupied her heart. Aurora maintained the reserved heart of a young girl. She responded weakly, her long eyelashes fluttering gently. Her pair of beautiful face blushed, and her white, tender little hand clenched even tighter. The night in Balavax was especially calm. The gentle wind blew, rippling the long moat. The two held hands, the moonlight elongating their shadows as they gradually disappeared into the night. The Moulin Rouge was as bustling as ever. Every day there was an endless stream of guests from all over the place. In the brightly lit hall, there was an exciting performance of singing and dancing, accompanied by scantily clad waitresses. It was a scene of joy and harmony. In a dark corner of the hall, a tall figure sat in front of the bar. Judging from his flushed face, he had drunk quite a lot. Give me another glass. The figure in the corner was Heifels. He had just finished a full glass of high-grade ale, and said in a gruff voice. The waiter did not dare to be negligent. Many of the people here were practitioners. He was just an ordinary person, and he could not afford to offend any of them. He poured a full glass and placed it in front of Heifels. He said carefully, Sir, you've drunk a lot today. Please take care of yourself. The waiter had good intentions, but Heifers was extremely uncomfortable with his words. He slammed his wine glass onto the table and glared at the waiter with his drunken eyes as he scolded, Do I need you to tell me how much I drink? Or are you afraid that I don't have money? Let me tell you, I have a lot of money. Yes. The waiter could only let him scold him. The person next to him who looked like a supervisor gave him a look and let him leave. After venting his anger for a while, Heifels ended up being snubbed. He was a knight, after all. Why would he want to compete with a commoner? However, at this moment, Heifels was in a very bad mood. He was defeated by Ron. The fight was fair and he was convinced of his loss. However, he was not in a good mood. He had no interest in challenging Mocklin. He could only come here to drown his sorrows. After drinking for a while, Heifels felt a little urgent to pee. He got up and went to the toilet. When he came out of the toilet, he was drunk and staggered. He did not pay attention and bumped into a person. That person was a thief. He was relatively thin and almost fell to the ground. He glared and scolded, F***ck, don't you F***king look where you're going? Do you know who I am? Highfields was infuriated when he heard that. He hadn't even vented the anger in his chest yet when someone happened to bump into him. F***ck, I don't care who the F***ck you are. If you piss me off, I'll kill you right away, you! The thief was furious. Heifels glared. What? You want to fight? I'm not afraid of a little thief like you. Seeing Hafer's burly figure, the bandit's heart trembled, and he forcefully retracted his fist that was raised in the air. He put on a brave front and said, Good lad, if you have the guts, leave your name and I'll find someone to kill you. Heifels heard this and laughed. I am Heifels from the Balarax Academy's elite knight class. I'm afraid you won't dare to come. The thief's eyes widened. What? The Balarax Academy? Hearing this name, the thief was overjoyed. F***ck, I finally found someone from the Balarax Academy. That thief was from the Soaring Dragon Academy. They had sent people all over the city to look for people from the Balarax Academy. However, because the Balarax Academy was in a crucial period of the ranking tournament, they didn't want to miss it. Tomorrow would be the most exciting match of the ranking tournament. Not many students left the academy. They had all gone to rest early. Right, Heifels said. Didn't you want to find someone to kill me? If you have the guts, I'll change my surname to yours. Mother ***ker, just you wait. That thief coldly spat out these words without batting an eyelid and turned to leave. F***ck, gutless guy. Heifels fiercely pointed his middle finger. However, he was just talking. Even if he wanted to make a move, he would not do it in a place like the Moulin Rouge. He knew that there were strong people overseeing this place. The thief left the Moulin Rouge and ran all the way to the corner of a street. Boss Perdita, Boss Perdita. The thief saw a group of people from afar and immediately shouted. This group of people were students from the Soaring Dragon Academy. There were about 20 to 30 of them. They had searched half of the Balarax Academy but could not find a single student from the Balarax Academy. They were discussing countermeasures when Perdita heard someone reading a pornographic novel. She was unhappy when she called her and snappily said, What's the matter? The thief said in a low voice, Boss Perdita, we found. Perdita frowned. What did you find? People from the Balarax Academy, eh? Perdita was excited. Where? How many people do they have? The thief replied, That guy is in the Moulin Rouge. It seems like he is alone. Alone? The girl called Perdita muttered. If it's only one person, it's not a big problem. However, the Moulin Rouge is not a good place to make a move. The thief said, We can ambush him in front of the Moulin Rouge and wait for him to come out. He should have come out by now. That's right. Perdita replied with a smile. They won't care if we fight outside the Moulin Rouge. Hee, I've finally found one. This should be enough for me to report to Boss Pigurin. Hee, I heard that Burns hasn't found one yet. Perdita and Barnes were both Pigurin's subordinates. The two of them liked to compete. When they heard that Barnes was beaten half to death by a necromancer, they were very happy. Chapter 154. Heifers drank a few more cups before paying the bill. He then yelled and walked out of the Moulin Rouge in a drunken stupor. When he came out of the Moulin Rouge, it was already very late. The night wind blew, making Heifels sober. He held his forehead and walked toward the Ballarak's academy. When he turned a remote corner, he heard the sound of chaotic footsteps. Who is it? Heifels became vigilant. At this time, 20 to 30 people surrounded Heifels. These people were brimming with killing intent. They were well trained and seemed to have come prepared. Heifels was completely sober at this time. He faintly felt that something was wrong. The other party seemed to have come for him, but he couldn't imagine that he hadn't offended anyone recently. Friend, could it be that you have mistaken me for someone else? Heifels's psychological quality was very strong. He quickly calmed down. The leader of the group, a woman, coldly smiled and asked, "Are you from the Ballarak's academy?" "Correct," Heifels replied. Then he probed, "You." Heifels's words were interrupted by the woman. "That's enough. We didn't mistake you for someone else. Let's start." Those people roared in anger. At the same time, their figures flashed as they used their summoning technique. Not long after, earth dragons drilled out from the ground. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Their huge bodies emitted a frightening power. Heifels's heart suddenly tightened. "Earth dragons, you're from the Soaring Dragon Academy." "Correct." The leader of the group rode on the tall earth dragon and said with a smile, "Since you know, then obediently hand over your life." At this time, Heifels also summoned his long-fanged tiger and rode on it. He took out his mace from his space bag and said in a deep voice, "What is your Soaring Dragon Academy trying to do? Could it be that you want to start a war again?" The woman smiled and said, "So what if we start a war? Who asked you to touch my people and hide in the academy and refuse to come out? We can only resort to this." Heifels was just about to ask who did this to their people when he heard a dragon knight say, "Boss Perdita, why are you talking so much nonsense with him? Just do it." Perdita knew that he had spoken too much. His face darkened, and he rode the earth dragon towards Heifels. Heifels wasn't someone who was afraid of trouble. With a sneer, he pounced on the earth dragon with his long-fanged tiger. A fierce tiger with long fangs and an earth dragon. The two fierce beasts were fighting, and their roars filled the entire street. Perdita chuckled. "Don't struggle. You are only one person. Against so many dragon knights, you have no chance of winning. Just obediently surrender," Heifels angrily roared. He swung the mace in his hand and smashed it towards Perdita with the sound of wind breaking. The flames on Perdita's body rose up and reached the limit. Boom! The mace smashed into Perdita's spear. She only felt a huge force pass through her body. Her expression changed and her spear almost fell out of her hand. Her heart trembled. "This guy is so strong," Heifels took advantage of his drunken state. Like a fierce tiger, he rushed left and right. In just a short while, he had rushed through a gap. He raised his head and laughed. "Ha ha, the so-called Soaring Dragon Academy is nothing more than this." Perdita clenched her silver teeth and fiercely said, "Go, tear this guy to pieces." More than 20 dragon knights moved. They rode their earth dragons and crazily rushed towards Heifels. These earth dragons were covered in thick heavy armor and were advancing like a tank. Heifels's tiger had the advantage in terms of agility and attack power. The earth dragons of the Soaring Dragon Academy were relatively slower, but their scales were sturdy. The rest would depend on the level of the dragon knight. As the saying goes, a knight who only relies on his mount is not a good knight. This saying was proven by the Soaring Dragon Academy. In terms of strength, Heifels was still a level higher. Combined with the strength of his tiger, he was even more powerful than the dragon knights. Under Heifels' attacks, the dragon knights were forced to retreat. Although the dragon knights were still bitterly fighting, they were somewhat frightened. One of them wiped his sweat and said to Perdita, "This Ballarak's academy can't be this abnormal, right? Even a random student is this strong? How are we supposed to live? Perdita's expression was also very serious. This can't be the top expert of their academy, right? Perdita guessed correctly. In reality, Heifels was indeed the top expert of the Ballarak's academy. His strength was close to the peak of the warrior rank. The battle between the two sides on the street caused a lot of destruction. The ground had long since been burned by the battle energy, and the surrounding shops were destroyed. The people inside were fleeing in all directions. It was a scene of doomsday. If one were to ask what the residents of the Ballarak's academy were most afraid of, it was undoubtedly the fierce battle between the three great academies. Every time there was a battle, the residents would suffer losses. They could only complain to the higher-ups of the academies. The higher-ups of the academies also didn't want to make a big deal out of this matter, so they did their best to control it. However, small-scale conflicts between the academies still occurred from time to time. A battle of this scale hadn't been seen in a long time. The residents of the Ballarak city were dumbstruck. The battle on the street attracted the attention of the Dragon Knight. They had originally come out to search for the students of the Ballarak's academy. At this moment, they were rapidly approaching the center of the battle. There's movement over there. It might be the people of the Ballarak's academy. Quick, let's go over there. The Dragon Knights summoned their Earth Dragons from their summoning spaces and rode them to the battlefield. The entire city was in chaos. The ground dragons' enormous bodies trampled over the streets, turning the streets into a mess. The more Heifels fought, the more unfavorable the situation became. Although he could face more than 10 ground dragons without batting an eyelid, as more and more Dragon Knights appeared, his heart began to sink. At this moment, at the corner of the street, a ground dragon twice the size of an ordinary ground dragon appeared in Heifels's line of sight. This ground dragon had an incomparably large head and 2 small eyes that emitted a fierce light. Unlike ordinary ground dragons that walked on all fours, this one stood on both legs with a long tail behind it. Its thick and sharp claws firmly stepped on the ground. Wherever it passed, the ground would shatter. The most terrifying thing about this ground dragon was its bloody mouth. It took up more than a fifth of the ground dragon's body and had many long and sharp teeth that flickered with a cold light. When Heifels's gaze fell on the person on the ground dragon's back, all the blood in his body froze. Tyrannosaurus Rex Piguterin? Piguterin's mount was a powerful Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was also the reason why he was called a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Ha ha ha! Piguterin howled with laughter. And here I was wondering who it was. So it was you who caused such a ruckus, Tiger King Heifels of Ballarak's academy. No wonder our people couldn't deal with you. Ah, he's Heifels? Many people had naturally heard of Heifels' great name and were greatly shocked. Perdita looked at the injured Dragon Knight and thought to himself, there's no such thing as a false reputation. Heifels angrily said, Piguterin, what's the meaning of this? Could it be that you want to start a war between the two academies? That's right. Piguterin laughed. The two academies have been quiet for too long. I want to start a war, so what? Could it be that your academy is scared? Kill! Heifels's eyes were bloodshot. Piguterin's arrival put him under great pressure, especially his Tyrannosaurus Rex, which weighed 8 tons. Heifels didn't think that his tiger would be a match for the Tyrannosaurus Rex. He was prepared to fight with his life on the line. Piguterin laughed arrogantly. Heifers, since you've come, then stay. As he spoke, he raised the 2-handed greatsword in his hands, which was more than 2 feet long, and swept it towards Heifers like the wind. Boom! 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 The spiked club and the 2-handed greatsword collided, creating a loud noise. Because both sides cultivated fiery do-chi, a huge wave of fire was formed when they collided, engulfing everything in their surroundings. Damn it! Heifels cursed. He had suffered some light injuries from his clash with Piguterin. At this moment, He could clearly feel that Piguterin was stronger than him. Piguterin shook his head. Heifels, your strength really disappoints me. I'm afraid that only your Academy's #1 paladin, Mocklin, can make me look forward to it. Heifels spat out a mouthful of blood. So what if he's the Academy's #1 paladin? He's probably not #1 anymore. Oh! An interested expression appeared on Piguterin's face. Then who is it? Heifels cracked a smile. You wouldn't know even if I told you. Let me tell you, the strongest person in the Academy right now is Ron. Even I lost to him. Ron? Piguterin frowned slightly. Why does this name sound so familiar? At this moment, a dragon knight beside him said, Boss Piguterin, I heard that the necromancer who defeated Theon is called Ron. Heifels chuckled. So there's such a thing. Looks like he taught you dragon knights a lesson. Alright, it sounds pretty good to me now, Piguterin smiled. So it's him, the ancient necromancer Ron. His name is being spread throughout the entire Balarax Academy. I was just thinking of meeting him. Piguterin paused. To be honest, I'm very interested in him. I really want to see how he used those weak skeletons to defeat dragon knights. Heifels smiled. You definitely aren't his match. Heifels said this to provoke Piguterin, but Piguterin didn't fall for it as he had expected. Whether I'm his match or not, we'll only know after we fight. However, I'm already certain that you aren't my match, Heifels. Surrender without a fight. I'll have your mentor come to ransom you. Chapter 155. Boom, boom, boom. The fierce battle shook the entire Balarax city. At the same time, it attracted the attention of many people. At this moment, a series of urgent knocks broke the silence outside Montgot's room. Headmaster Montgot! Headmaster Montgot! The Soaring Dragon Academy's instructor braced himself and knocked on the door of the Golden Dragon Knight Montgot's room. Who is it? Montgot slowly got up, put on his pajamas, and opened the door. Seeing the person, he lightly nodded. Is there something urgent? The instructor anxiously said, Headmaster, it's not good. Our students have been organized and are looking for trouble with the Balarax Academy. Oh? Montgot frowned. What's going on? I heard that the Balarax Academy beat up our people and then hid in the academy. Our students couldn't take this lying down and are looking for trouble with other students. The instructor spoke like a machine gun. His voice was somewhat anxious. Headmaster, the situation is very serious. We have to control it as soon as possible. The city is in a bit of chaos. Control the situation? Montgot laughed involuntarily. Are we the ones who lost? Not at all. On the contrary, dozens of us surrounded one of them and almost beat him down, the instructor said. Montgot chuckled. What's there to control? Isn't this a good thing? The instructor was stunned. His mouth was wide open but he couldn't say anything. Montgot smiled. Alright, those brats are giving me face. Hee, this isn't a big deal. Those kids are just venting their excess energy. No need to make a fuss. But many residents of the city have complained to us. The instructor said worriedly. It's fine. Let them complain. When those brats are done causing trouble, I will clean up their mess. Montgot chuckled. The instructor wanted to say more but Montgot didn't give him the chance. He immediately said, That's it. If there's nothing else, don't disturb me, Headmaster. With that, Montgot slammed the door with a bang. The instructor stood outside the door with a helpless expression. He shook his head and let out a long sigh. Just then the door of the room opened again, and Montgot put out his head. Mr. Dean. The teacher was overjoyed. He thought that the dean had changed his mind again. Montgot smiled and said, Let me ask you, who is the one who started this? The teacher thought for a moment before replying, I think it's Piguterin. Piguterin? Montgot's eyes widened. Yes, that's all. You can go now. Montgot heaved a sigh of relief and slammed the door shut. Outside the door, the instructor could only feel depressed again. Pigurin. With his back to the door, Montego's face was full of smiles. Hee, so it's this guy. With him here, the Soaring Dragon Academy shouldn't suffer any losses. He slowly walked to the window and saw the smoke rising from Balavax. Prats, you old bastard, he murmured to himself. This time you're in trouble, aren't you? Ha ha. Montegot was overjoyed. On the surface, the three great academies of Balavax did their own things and developed together, but in reality, there were many open and covert struggles. Everyone wanted to suppress the other, especially the Balavax Academy and the Soaring Dragon Academy. One had a long history and was famous, while the other was full of vitality. It would be strange if there were no conflict. What's that? Ron held Aurora's hand and stopped in his tracks. He looked at the blazing flames in the distance, the rising clouds of black smoke, and the sounds of explosions coming from time to time. Aurora frowned. Maybe students are fighting. This kind of thing happens often in Balavax, but it's rare to see fights outside the academy. Pornographic novel boom. At this moment, the wall in front of Ron was knocked open, giving the two of them a fright. Heifels? Ron finally recognized the person, and couldn't help but stare blankly. Who else could that person be but Heifels? Aurora coldly snorted. She didn't have a good impression of Heifels. Heifels, how are you? Although they were once enemies, seeing the heavily injured Heifels, Ron couldn't help but feel pity for him. He hurriedly rushed over and helped him up. At this moment, Heifels's face was covered in blood. His abdomen had been pierced by the dragon rider's spear. Blood flowed out like a fountain, and he was on the verge of death. Heifels saw Ron and his eyes lit up. He couldn't help but muster up some strength. His bloodied hand grabbed Ron's sleeve and said, "Let's go, the Soaring Dragon Academy's people are here." Ron frowned. What? The Soaring Dragon Academy? Let's go, it'll be too late. They have a lot of people. Heifels hurriedly said. Ron didn't have time to reply. At this time, with a boom sound, the surrounding walls shattered, revealing a dense crowd of people. Ron was stunned, and so was Aurora. Especially Aurora, she was so scared that she couldn't move. There were dragon knights everywhere, and nearly 1,000 earth dragons appeared in front of them. Those earth dragons were constantly letting out low roars, and their huge bodies and sharp teeth were terrifying to look at. Ron and Aurora didn't know what kind of luck they had. Being stared at by nearly 1,000 earth dragons was definitely not a fun thing to do. Fuck. So many? Ron came back to his senses. His heart jumped. This Heifels couldn't have slept with the Soaring Dragon Academy's principal's daughter, right? He actually sent so many people. This could be considered as poking a hornet's nest. Heifels, what's going on? This is too powerful. Ron was flabbergasted. Nearly 1,000 earth dragons appeared at the same time. This scene was too spectacular. We'll talk about this later. Let's go. Heifels anxiously said. Ha ha ha. At this time, an arrogant voice was heard. Heifels, didn't you want to run? Let's see where you can run to. Not long after, a dragon rider slowly walked out. He was riding an extremely tall and strong earth dragon. It was twice as big as an ordinary earth dragon. When that earth dragon walked past, the other earth dragons seemed to have lost their former prestige and lowered their heads one after another. Tyrannosaurus Rex Pigurin slowly walked out. He completely ignored Ron and Aurora beside Heifels. He smiled at Heifels and said, "Heifels, I already said, it's useless for you to run." Ron took a deep breath and helped Heifels up. He calmly said, "Who are you? Why are you chasing Heifels?" Pigurin faintly smiled. "Kid, you don't have the right to ask me that, Ron." Ron coldly smiled. He was about to answer when he was interrupted by a voice. He frowned and saw a familiar figure. That head of short, snow-white hair was extremely conspicuous. Ron's pupils shrank. "Barnes." "That's right. It's me," Barnes fiercely said. "You didn't expect it, did you, Ron?" We meet again so soon. It's time to return the humiliation you gave me. Barnes' eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Ron as if he was looking at an enemy. Ron, what do we do? Aurora was somewhat panicked. This was the first time she had faced such a dangerous situation. She couldn't help but tightly grip Ron's clothes and hide behind him. As an archer, she had an innate fear of professions with super high defense. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Ron comforted Aurora, but at the same time, his heart sank. He wasn't afraid of Barnes. With his mastery of curses, defeating Barnes was something that could be done in a matter of minutes. However, nearly 1,000 Dragon Knights made him feel an immense pressure. Furthermore, Ron had a feeling that the fellow riding the rank 6 Tyrannosaurus Rex was very dangerous. So it's him. Piguterin smiled. You're that necromancer who injured Barnes. You look so young. Haha, this is great. We found the right person. Ron took a deep breath and asked, You're looking for me? Or did Barnes ask you to take revenge for him? Yes and no. Piguterin smiled. As far as I'm concerned, as long as you're a student of Ballarak's Academy, you're my enemy. At this time, Heifels had also recovered some of his strength. He said to Ron, Ron, it's useless to talk to him like this. He's already got us. No, not just us, but the entire Academy. This guy is using this as an excuse to challenge the two academies to a war. But, Ron asked in astonishment, what's in it for them? Nothing. The Soaring Dragon Academy wants to suppress the Ballarak's Academy. Heifels smiled bitterly. We've fought many such battles in the past. Piguterin laughed. You're at death's door. What are you still muttering about? Go die for me. After saying this, he didn't waste any more words. He pointed his finger and shouted, Brothers charge, roar! Over 1,000 earth dragons roared and rushed towards Ron's group. Run! There was only one thought in Ron's mind, and that was to run. Run back to the Ballarak's Academy. That was the safest place. Ron pulled Heifels with one hand and Aurora with the other, running as fast as he could. Behind them, over 1,000 earth dragons were hot on their heels. No, we'll be caught, Heifels said anxiously. The earth dragons weren't slow. Soon, they were getting closer and closer. Ron looked back. Sure enough, the earth dragons were running wildly on all fours. Soon, they had caught up with quite a few of them. This won't do. Ron's mind raced. He made a prompt decision. Aurora, Heifels, hurry back to the academy and ask for help. I'll stay here and block them for a while. You! Heifels was shocked. No, there are over 1,000 earth dragons. You're not their match at all. Heifels ran into dozens of earth dragons, and was about to escape. How could Ron stay behind and block them? He wouldn't even need a minute to be crushed to pieces. Aurora also loudly objected. Ron, I won't let you take this risk. Chapter 156. Ron's attitude was firm. Heifels and Aurora could only helplessly nod their heads. Aurora said, Ron, don't worry. I'll go back and immediately pull the Skull Association's members over. I'll pull as many as I can. Heifels also said, I'll also pull my subordinates over. Damn it, the Soaring Dragon Academy. Do they only have more people? Ron nodded. Be careful. Aurora's eyes revealed concern. Ron, you have to be careful too. If you can't beat them, don't try to be brave. We'll come and save you. After saying that, Heifels and Aurora immediately sped up while Ron stayed behind. Ron, have you decided to face this Dragon Knight Legion alone? Homelin's voice sounded in Ron's ears. His soul shadow had already come out of the soul ring and was looking at Ron with a worried expression. Ron took a deep breath. Grandpa Homelin, I don't have a choice. Homelin nodded. Do you want me to help you? No need. Ron shook his head. His eyes flashed with confidence. I want to give it a try first. Very good. Homelin nodded in satisfaction. A kind smile appeared on his face. Whether you succeed or fail, this confidence is worth affirming. Don't forget, Grandpa Homelin has always been watching you." At this time, the Dragon Knights of the Soaring Dragon Academy split into two and surrounded the small and skinny Ron. Looking at the small prey in front of them, the Dragon Knights' faces were filled with disdain and contempt. Only Terrence's expression was grave. He knew that Ron wasn't someone easy to deal with. Perguterin approached on his T-Rex with a fiendish smile. "You let your two friends leave. Do you want to stay behind and bear the wrath of the Soaring Dragon Academy? If so, congratulations, you've already achieved your goal." On the side, Perdita said, "Boss Perguterin, I think those two are most likely going back to call for reinforcements." "Call for help?" Perguterin laughed and waved his hand. "Let them be, I want to see what kind of people they can call out." Ron took out the dark gold bone staff from his spatial bag. He recited an incantation and remained vigilant of his surroundings. Perguterin glanced at Ron, "But before that, let's get rid of this little bug first." Perdita chuckled as he placed one hand on his chest and made an inviting gesture. "Boss Perdita, isn't it just a necromancer? We don't need to make such a big fuss over a minor issue. If this were to spread, we would be ridiculed by others. How about giving him to me?" Perdita's intentions were clear. She wanted to fight Ron alone. On one hand, she wanted to show off in front of Perdita, and on the other hand, she wanted to suppress Terrence. Both of them were capable subordinates of Perdita. They were usually at odds with each other, so how could Perdita miss such an opportunity? "Hee, aren't you very awesome, Barnes? He was actually defeated by a necromancer. If I defeat him now, won't it show that I'm stronger than you? At the same time, it will also show that you're incompetent." Perdita's calculations were very good. In her opinion, no matter how powerful a necromancer was, he couldn't be that powerful. The reason Barnes lost was most likely because he was defeated by another powerhouse. He couldn't take it, so he made up a story about a necromancer. Barnes naturally knew what she was thinking. He coldly snorted and didn't say anything. His strength was about the same as Perdita's. If he was defeated, he would naturally be happy to see Perdita make a fool of herself. Perguterin faintly smiled. "That's right, go." He waved his hand and those Dragon Knights acted like a well-trained army. They consciously retreated and opened up a space. There was a large empty space around Ron, and there were only two people quietly confronting each other in the middle. Perdita's erotic novel. Perdita laughed. "Kid, you're dead meat. If you don't want to suffer, kneel down and kowtow to this young lady a few dozen times. This young lady might consider letting you go." Ron took a deep breath and slowly raised the bone staff in his hand. He said, "Less nonsense. Come." He had already made up his mind. It was impossible to escape from the encirclement of so many Dragon Knights. His only chance was to capture this woman. Perdita felt that she was being looked down upon. Her almond eyes widened and she angrily shouted, "Kid, die!" As she spoke, she clamped her legs together. The Earth Dragon roared and quickly rushed towards Ron. She held a long dragon spear in her hand and closed the distance of a dozen meters in an instant. Ron didn't move. Seeing the opponent's 2-meter-long spear thrust towards him, he didn't have any intention of dodging. Closer, closer. Ron could clearly see the cruel smile on Perdita's face. The surrounding Dragon Knights were also puzzled. Was this kid looking to die? Why wasn't he dodging? TCH, he can't even dodge one of my attacks. This necromancer is simply trash. Perdita was even more disdainful. Since Ron didn't dodge, she also didn't have any intention of showing mercy. She thrust her spear forward to take his life. With a whoosh, Perdita's spear pierced through empty air. She could only see strands of black smoke emerge from Ron's body. The spear passed through without any hindrance. The black smoke dispersed and Ron disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Perdita was stunned. What happened? Where did he go? He actually disappeared? Perdita frowned and a bad feeling flashed through his heart. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and he shouted, Perdita, be careful. He's behind you, what? Perdita was stunned. She turned around and saw that a black fog had appeared behind her at some point. The necromancer's figure gradually appeared, and then a sharp bone spur was pressed against her throat. Don't move. Otherwise, I can guarantee that even a priest won't be able to save you. Ron's figure appeared behind Perdita. He stood on the dragon's back and spoke in a deep voice. What? Everyone simultaneously sucked in a breath of cold air. One move, just one move, and Perdita was captured. This necromancer was actually this powerful? It must be known that although Perdita was a girl, her strength was considered outstanding in the Soaring Dragon Academy. Yet, she was captured in an instant? How was this possible? You! Perdita was both shocked and angry. She didn't think that she would be captured in one move. She was intimidated by Ron's strength and didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. In the end, Perdita was too careless. In her eyes, the so-called necromancer was nothing more than trash. Because of this preconceived view, she became careless and gave Ron the opportunity to take advantage of her. If she had been more cautious with Ron's strength, he wouldn't have been able to capture her in one move. Seeing that their own people were restrained, the Dragon Knights clamored and cursed. Bastard! Let Perdita go, despicable guy, lowly necromancer! However, although they cursed, they didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Perdita was still in the hands of that trash necromancer. This made them helpless. They were too careless. Pegutron's complexion was very ugly. That necromancer had captured Perdita in a fair one-on-one battle. Perhaps his methods were a bit despicable, but it was also very normal in a battle. This made him speechless. He could only blame himself for underestimating this necromancer. If he could defeat Barnes, he should have been more vigilant. Damn stupid woman, if not for your carelessness, I wouldn't have been in such a passive situation. Pegutron cursed inwardly. He was very dissatisfied with Perdita. Barnes was also cursing like the other Dragon Knight. However, in his heart, he was rejoicing in Perdita's misfortune. He was very happy to see Perdita suffer. This woman often opposed him in front of Pegutron. Ron slowly raised his head and said with a smile, "Let me leave and I will let this woman go. Otherwise..." As he spoke, he tightened his grip on the bone spear. A trace of blood seeped out from Perdita's neck. Pegutron's face sank. "Are you threatening me? What do you think?" Ron had a smile on his face. With a hostage in hand, he took the initiative and talked cheerfully in front of nearly 1,000 Dragon Knights. To be honest, Ron's request wasn't excessive. He just wanted to leave. There was no deep hatred between the two sides. Most of the fights between the students of the two academies were mainly due to aura. There was no knot that couldn't be untied. However, Pegutron didn't dare. He had brought people out to cause trouble for the Balarax Academy with great fanfare. In the end, the other side had taken a hostage and left in a carefree manner. In the end, this matter had become a complete joke. With so many subordinates watching, he couldn't afford to lose face. Pegutron had always underestimated Ron. When he came back to his senses, he realized how much pressure he was under. He definitely couldn't let Perdita go, but if he didn't, his subordinates would be bitterly disappointed. At this moment, he was riding a tiger and couldn't get off. Now, Pegutron was truly regretting it. He regretted not dealing with this problem earlier and choosing to have a duel. Ron held Perdita hostage and used her body as a shield in front of him. His expression was relaxed, but his eyes were full of vigilance. The bone spear didn't dare to leave her throat for even a moment. "Bastard, I'll risk it." Pegutron's eyes also flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. "Go, kill this guy." "What?" Ron's heart tightened. He hadn't thought that Pegutron would be so ruthless that he didn't even care about the lives of his subordinate. Perdita's face was deathly pale. No one could clearly feel the helplessness of being held hostage. Her life was still in the other side's hands, but Pegatron didn't care at all. For a moment, tears streamed down Perdita's face. But Perdita is still in his hands. The dragon rider at the side was a bit hesitant. What if Perdita was injured? Bastard, is she the boss or am I the boss? Don't worry about it, go. Being toyed with by a weak existence, Peguterin almost went mad with anger. He slapped the Dragon Knight and shouted at the same time. Yes. Under Pegatron's pressure, the Dragon Rider could only brace himself. Although he was disgusted with Pegatron's style, he could only carry out his orders. In the blink of an eye, a few Earth Dragons had already rushed in front of Ron. They held spears in their hands and stabbed at Ron. For a moment, Ron was surrounded by danger. Chapter 157. Touching her snow-white neck, Perdita was still in a state of shock. However, she at least knew that she was safe. She couldn't help but cast a grateful glance at Ron's back. Peguterin rushed over on his T-Rex and asked with concern, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Perdita shook her head. Looking at Peguterin, she only felt a chill in her heart. As the boss, Peguterin didn't care about the lives of his subordinates at all. For the sake of his own face, he actually sent his subordinates to their death. This kind of behavior made her feel disgusted. Peguterin didn't notice the thoughts of his subordinate. He only fiercely said, "This hateful necromancer, once I catch him, I'll definitely teach him a lesson." Ron shuttled back and forth in the forest of spears of the Dragon Knights. Spears stabbed at him one after another. He relied on his agility to dodge them with all his might. The Dragon Knights were dazzled and only saw a shadow. They almost suspected that they had encountered a thief. However, Ron wasn't having a good time either. He rolled on the ground and was almost stabbed several times. There was also the Earth Dragon's huge foot. It wouldn't be a good thing to be stepped on by it. Lightly taking a deep breath, Ron crossed his arms and lightly pushed the bone staff forward. At the same time, he chanted an incantation and a black mist appeared in his palm. Dark Spirit Vision. In an instant, the Dragon Knights felt their eyes shrouded in a layer of black mist. Their vision suddenly decreased. "Bastard, I can't see. Damn it, what kind of sorcery is this guy using? Ouch, you bumped into me." A small, dark spirit vision curse spell caused these Dragon Knights to fall into chaos. This was the first time Ron used a curse spell in a real battle. It was quite effective. Although there weren't many Dragon Knights with decreased vision, it was enough to cause chaos. Bone Spike. White dots of light pierced out, immediately injuring many Dragon Knights. Ron was able to smoothly rush out of the encirclement. "Quick, don't let him escape." Peguterin was both startled and angry. At this time, he truly experienced the strength of this necromancer. He wasn't so easy to deal with. Ron didn't escape. He was also angered by the Soaring Dragon Academy. At this time, he was determined to counterattack. Bone Prison. Bone cages rose from the ground and stopped the dragons that were crazily pushing forward. Crash. They fell down one after another. The dragons in front stopped while the ones behind continued to push forward. It was a chaotic scene. Bone Arrow, with the bone staff in hand, Ron began his counterattack. Bone arrows imbued with soul power shot towards the immobilized Dragon Knights. The Dragon Knights fell to the ground one after another, clutching their wounds and groaning. "Get up! Get up!" Again and again, he was at a disadvantage. The powerful Dragon Knight was actually being played around with by a mere necromancer. Peguterin was about to go mad with anger. He had never thought that having a huge drake was sometimes a drawback. The drake that had fallen in front of him was blocking his path forward, not to mention his Tyrannosaurus Rex. Ron coldly smiled. His mouth didn't stop, continuing to chant the incantation. The bone staff in his hand danced like an excellent conductor. A black soul force crazily rushed out of his body. Ron's eyes turned green, appearing incomparably sinister in the dark night. At this time, there was a slight disturbance in the ground around Ron. The disturbance grew bigger and bigger, and before long, white skeletons appeared one after another. The grayish-black ground seemed to connect the gates of hell to the mortal world. Skeletons from the graveyard scrambled to crawl out of the ground. A sea of skeleton warriors, and skeleton mages appeared in front of the Dragon Knights. There were so many white bones that it was impossible to tell how many there were at first glance. A trace of astonishment appeared in the eyes of the Dragon Knights. They were frightened by the black eye sockets of the skeletons. So many skeletons. Heavens, aren't these skeletons summoned by necromancers? These skeletons looked terrifying. A trace of fear appeared in the eyes of the Dragon Knights. They felt that the skeletons in front of them weren't as simple as they had imagined. Skeleton haste. Ron chanted the last incantation. Summoning so many skeletons at once had already exhausted all of his soul force, but Ron wasn't worried. The soul ring would replenish his soul force. Don't worry about it, these skeletons won't be able to withstand a single blow. Pegatron had also seen necromancers summon skeletons before, but now that he'd seen Ron's mystical necromancy magic, he didn't dare to lower his guard. At this time, his eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. He wanted nothing more than to kill Ron, but the earth dragons in front of him were blocking the way. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Kill! Following Ron's order, the skeletons seemed to come alive. They raised their heads one after another, and specks of green light lit up in their black eye sockets. Then, all the skeletons let out howls from the depths of their souls. Countless skeleton warriors broke into the group of earth dragons and engaged in close combat with the Dragon Knight. The skeleton mages also condensed magic bullets and continuously bombarded the Dragon Knight. The Dragon Knights felt that something was wrong as soon as they came into contact with the skeleton warriors. The skeleton warriors were still alright. They were relatively weak, and although they were very fast, they didn't pose a threat. However, the skeleton warriors were different. These fellows wearing heavy armor weren't so easy to deal with. When faced with the Dragon Knight's spears, they would raise the bone shields in their hands to block. The most frightening thing was that the skeletons weren't afraid of death. Moreover, there were so many of them that they rushed over in wave after wave, catching the Dragon Knights unawares. Boom! 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 Magic exploded among the Dragon Knights. Many of them were hit by the magic. They fell to the ground, injured, and then were trampled by the earth dragons. The entire scene was chaotic. At this time, the light of the soul ring gradually faded. Ron's soul energy had been completely replenished. With a thought, he chanted another incantation, and another group of skeletons crawled up from the ground. Magic rose up one after another. Bone spears, bone arrows, and bone spurs were wildly rained down on the Dragon Knight. It hurts, I got an arrow in my thigh. Priest. Save me, I can't hold on much longer. Under the attack of Ron's undead army, the Dragon Knights howled in grief. Ron was ruthless in his heart. At this time, he was going all out. Among them, the ones with the strongest attack power were the skeleton mages. Their spells soared into the sky and landed in the crowd, sweeping away a large number of them. Although the earth dragons had a certain amount of magic resistance, they were unable to withstand the bombardment of spells. A Dragon Knight raised his spear and shattered a skeleton warrior. The skeleton warrior's body disappeared like black smoke. He said to Pegatron, "Boss, these guys are too damn difficult to deal with." Pegatron said in a low voice, "Get out of the way, let me deal with him." He was ruthless in his heart. The T-Rex's huge body rolled over, opening up a path in an instant. Ron slowly raised his head. A two-handed greatsword attacked with a strong gust of wind. He focused his gaze and just happened to see Pegatron's sinister face. Ron wasn't surprised. He smiled and said, "You finally made your move?" Pegatron also put away his arrogance and nodded, saying, Your strength is beyond my imagination. I want to ask you, are you really a necromancer? With a faint smile, Ron slowly straightened his body. With a hint of confidence, he said clearly, "That's right, I am a necromancer." Pegatron smiled. Hee, I heard that Hefels lost to you. Unfortunately, I'm not Hefels. As he said that, the T-Rex under Pegatron took a step forward and opened its bloody mouth. Its long and sharp teeth were full of barbed spikes as it fiercely bit at Ron. The bite of that huge beast that weighed 8 tons could directly tear half a person's body apart. With light footsteps, Ron slowly took a step back. With a grab of his left hand, a white bone spear appeared out of thin air and pierced towards the huge beast's mouth. With a crack, the hard bone spear was crushed by the T-Rex's huge teeth. Ron's expression finally changed. It was too late to say anything. The T-Rex's legs paused and it charged towards Ron. Boom! Ron's thin and weak body was knocked into the air. He felt the world spin around him as he fell heavily to the ground like a kite with its string cut. Climbing up with difficulty, Ron felt as if all the bones in his body had fallen apart. Mages all had weak bodies, and necromancers were no exception. Die! Pegatron's eyes widened in anger. Nearly 1,000 Dragon Knights had actually spent so much time dealing with a single necromancer. This caused him to fly into a rage out of humiliation, and he charged towards Ron with all his might. Ron was not to be outdone. He rose up and counterattacked. Waves after waves of skeleton warriors, and skeleton mages were summoned, and they madly charged towards Pegatron. However, the result left him flabbergasted. Those skeletons were unable to withstand a single blow from the T-Rex. There was no need to mention the skeleton warriors. Their defense was weak, and apart from their speed, they had no other redeeming qualities. However, even the skeleton warriors that were known for their defense were not a match for the T-Rex. They were torn apart in the blink of an eye. Even the skeleton mage's magic was unable to do anything to the T-Rex. The T-Rex of the 6th rank was an invincible existence among those of the same rank. The only thing I can do now is to use the curse magic again. Taking a deep breath, Ron's eyes became clear. He raised one hand and chanted an incantation, using the curse magic of necromancy, weaken. A sense of powerlessness filled Pegatron's body, causing him to be shocked. What was going on? His body's strength was constantly draining away, and his fighting aura was weakening. That invincible two-handed greatsword had also become heavy. Not only that, but the T-Rex's body had also become sluggish, and its attack speed was not as strong as before. Pegatron's heart was filled with shock. At this moment, his gaze was fixed on Ron's thin figure. "Is this your doing?" Ron smiled, but did not answer his question. Instead, he asked a question of his own. "What do you think?" "Damn it!" Pegatron cursed fiercely, but Ron's strange necromancy magic still made him feel a chill in his heart. He rolled his eyes and said to the dumbstruck Dragon Knight behind him. Chapter 158. The Dragon Knights were more or less fearful of necromancy magic. This fear came from ignorance. They didn't understand necromancy, so they didn't know what other means the other party had to deal with them. But when they heard Pegatron's command, they still braced themselves and charged forward. Weaken! Ron continued to use the same trick, releasing a curse from his necromancy magic and weakening the group of Dragon Knights. Search for the latest updates. However, the results surprised Ron. The Dragon Knights didn't seem to be affected at all and continued to charge forward. Ron had no choice but to quickly dodge. "Grandpa Homelin, what's going on? Why is my curse ineffective?" Ron asked as he dodged the spears stabbing at him from all directions. Homelin's voice sounded in his ears. "Ron, curses have their limitations. The same curse has a completely different effect on a single person compared to a group of people. The more people you curse, the weaker the curse." Ron was speechless. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Homelin shrugged. I thought you knew. Hashtag yen percent. Heifels and Aurora jogged back to the academy. Heifels clutched his abdomen, blood spilling all over the ground. Are you all right? Aurora asked. Although she didn't like Heifels, she knew that they should be in the same boat. I can still hold on. Heifels took a deep breath and said to Aurora, You and I will split up and call for reinforcements, then go save Ron. We have to be quick. Ron won't be able to hold on for long. Aurora nodded. Highwells looked into the distance and saw a huge cloud of smoke rising from Ballarat. That was where the battle was taking place. At this moment, he had already forgotten about his grudge with Ron, and a trace of graveness appeared in his eyes. Ron, you have to hold on. Highwells muttered to himself with a solemn expression. Fatty, come out. As soon as Aurora returned to room 302, she woke up everyone who was sleeping soundly. Everyone had gone to bed early because the finals were going to be held tomorrow. Fatty had just fallen asleep and was having a wet dream when Aurora kicked open the door to the boys' room. She ran to his bed and pulled him up by the ear. Ouch! Ouch! It hurts! A fat man who was still asleep screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He opened his sleepy eyes and was shocked to see that it was Aurora. Oh, Boss Aurora, how did you come in? By this time Lantry and Rum had risen to their feet as well. You're still sleeping? Do you know that something happened to Ron? Aurora said anxiously. What? Hearing this, everyone quivered and came to their senses one after another. What's going on? Fatty also became nervous. He rolled his eyes. Is it Heifels? He lost today and was not convinced, so he came to fight with Ron again? Aurora shook her head. It's not him. Then who is it? The commotion in the boys' room also woke up everyone in the girls' room. Manny and Karachi appeared at the door and asked in unison. Aurora said, Do you still remember that day at Moulin Rouge we provoked those people from Soaring Dragon Academy? Their boss is coming to find trouble with us. Soaring Dragon Academy? Everyone turned pale with fright. Lantry asked, How many people do they have? Aurora's face turned grave. At least 1,000 people, and most of them are Dragon Knights. 1,000 people, most of them are Dragon Knights. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Is there still a need to fight? Aurora said. Now Ron is resisting them by himself. I don't know how long he can hold on for. We must gather a group of people and rush over. Yes, we must save Ron. Fatty also became anxious. Let's split up and act. Gather as many people as you can. Lantry said. Gather the people from Skull Association. On the other side, Heifels was also moving. In his small apartment, a group of people quickly gathered. His injury had already been healed by his wife, Missoya. His wife was an excellent priest. Big brother, why do we have to save Ron? Isn't he our enemy? Firth High angrily said. He wished that Ron would die. Bastard. Heifels scolded. The matter between me and Ron is a personal grudge. Now we are fighting with Soaring Dragon Academy. Soaring Dragon Academy is everyone's enemy. These are two different things. I think all your books have gone to the dog's stomach. You don't even understand this. Firth High was scolded by his big brother to the point that he couldn't raise his head. Ever since he was young, the person he was most afraid of was his big brother. Heifers sighed. Everything about this younger brother of his was good, except that he was a bit too disappointing. All he thought about all day was getting revenge on Ron. Revenge wasn't a bad thing, but he didn't have any strength. All he thought about was how unlucky Ron was, and his heart was extremely dark. He was a guy who couldn't do anything right, but was more likely to spoil things. If not for the fact that he was his younger brother, he would have kicked him out long ago. How about this? Heifels's face sank. I won't force everyone. If you want to go, then go. If you don't want to go, then go back to your dorm and lie down. Anyway, I have to remind you that there are nearly 1,000 Dragon Knights over there. Almost all the elites of Soaring Dragon Academy have gone out. If you are afraid of death, then don't go." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, they were hesitant. At this time, Hefels's wife's pornographic novel. Misoya resolutely stood up and calmly said, "I'll go." Firth High was stunned. "Sister-in-law, I'll go. I'll go too. Let's go. That bastard from Soaring Dragon Academy, why don't you go?" With an example taking the lead, everyone stood up and spoke passionately. Even Frazzino, who had a grudge against Ron, stood up. "Very good." Hefels waved his hand. "Time waits for no one. Let's go." Fatty and the others split up and knocked on each dorm's door one by one. Just like this, the news of Ron being beaten up by the Soaring Dragon Academy spread from one person to 10 to 100. Very quickly, the entire Soaring Dragon Academy knew about it. Ron was beaten up by them. Quickly go and support him. It seems to be over there. Look, the smoke pillar in the city. Anger was ignited in an instant. Regardless of whether Ron knew them or not, they all gathered together. They gave up their prejudices against each other and headed towards a common goal, Soaring Dragon Academy. Just like Dorm 302, Dorm 787 was also the main character of tomorrow's finals. However, unlike Dorm 302, they were a hot favorite. No matter how big or small the betting house was, they were all optimistic about them. Their odds were much higher than Dorm 302's. Naturally, they also received this news. However, everyone's heart was heavy. Tomorrow was the finals. Should they go or not? Shea raised her small fist and loudly shouted, "Go, why wouldn't I go? This is not only about the ranking tournament. This is related to the honor of our Ballarak's Academy." A priest hesitated and said, But tomorrow is the competition. At that time, I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it." It was not easy for a priest to recover their magic power. If they could save some, they would save some. Shea stared. "Can't handle it? Then didn't Ron still go? He is now happily fighting with those people from Soaring Dragon Academy. Why wouldn't he be afraid of tomorrow's ranking tournament?" That priest mumbled, "This matter was originally caused by him." "Ron caused it?" Shea sneered and said, "It seems like you don't know anything. The first one to be beaten was Hefels. Soaring Dragon Academy's goal is to cause a war between the two academies. This is a provocation. Do you understand provocation? Besides, this is not the first time something like this has happened." That priest was silent. Shea sneered and said, "From what I see, some people are taking the ranking tournament too seriously. They are afraid that they will lose tomorrow's competition. Therefore, they don't dare to go, right?" Regarding the Soaring Dragon Academy's provocation, everyone was clear in their hearts. However, they were divided on whether they should go or not. Kadena sweetly smiled and looked towards Mocklin and said, "Mocklin, you are the captain. What do you think?" Everyone's gaze turned towards the silent Mocklin. They had said so much and were all waiting for Mocklin's decision. "You're asking me?" Mocklin smiled and stood up. He stretched and said, "If you want me to say, then everyone should go to sleep." Once these words came out, everyone was stunned. Shea stood up and retorted, "Then we don't care about the Soaring Dragon Academy's matter." "Care about what?" Mocklin glanced at her and said, "Everyone should go do what they should do. Why bother with other people's business? Besides, even if we don't go, other people have already gone. They don't need to compete so naturally, they don't need to worry about exhaustion. If we go and exhaust our do-chi and magic before coming back, then I think we don't need to compete in tomorrow's competition. Even if we want to find trouble with the Soaring Dragon Academy, we should wait until the competition is over." Shea was speechless. She pointed at Mocklin and was speechless. Mocklin smiled. "What? Did I say something wrong?" Shea naturally knew that Mocklin was talking about the ranking competition. She couldn't say that he was wrong. She relaxed and secretly sulked. Karana gave Shea a meaningful glance and stood up. Mocklin, Ron also needs to compete tomorrow. He isn't afraid of exhaustion, but we are conserving our strength. If we do this, then it will seem as if we are afraid of him. Mocklin smiled. Kadena, what Ron wants to do is his business. We are not related to him in any way. Why should we join in the fun? Besides, Ron will naturally have to bear the consequences of his actions. What does this have to do with us? Actually, it wasn't that Mocklin didn't want to fight, but he had a more important plan in his heart, which was to kill Ron in the ranking competition tomorrow. This was also his only chance. In the academy, Mocklin couldn't make a move. There were teachers watching everywhere, and Ron wasn't an ordinary person either. He wasn't an opponent that could be dealt with in a short period of time. If the teachers were attracted, then it would be a loss. Therefore, the ranking competition became his only chance to kill Ron. In the duel arena, he could Guangming and openly attack Ron. As for the punishment for killing his opponent, Mocklin didn't care at all. You shameless, Shea said angrily, pointing at Mocklin. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say anything. Mocklin shrugged. Whatever you say. In any case, I won't go. I'll go myself. Shea was so agitated that her face was flushed red. She fiercely said this and rushed out of the door. Kadena looked at everyone and said, I'll go with Sister Shea. Then she turned and ran out as well. There were only 6 people left in dorm 787. Fate hesitated for a moment, but still followed. After that, 2 more people went out. In the end, only the priest and Mocklin were left there. The priest asked, Captain Mocklin, are we really not going? I'm not going. You can go. Mocklin smiled and said, Oh, okay. I'll go. The priest responded and left. After everyone left, Mocklin's face was completely gloomy. Looking at the backs of those people leaving, a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Chapter 159. Pegatron smiled. So you're saying that we have nothing to talk about? In truth, he had never wanted to talk at all. He was just looking for an excuse. Sometimes people didn't fight for benefit. Sometimes it was just to suppress the other side. Whether it was the Soaring Dragon Academy or the Balarax Academy, this was the case. It wasn't anyone's problem. In the Balarax Academy, the issue of who was the boss and who had the final say had been fought for decades. To these young, impulsive, hot-blooded students, the only way to resolve this issue was with their fists. It wasn't as if the 2 academies had never fought like this before. Shea, Heifels, and Mocklin had all participated in last year's war, so they weren't unfamiliar with Pegatron. Perhaps the freshmen of the Balarax Academy didn't know, but the seniors knew that the Soaring Dragon Academy was looking for an excuse to start a war. A person beside her raised a torch. The light from the burning flames illuminated Shea's face. Shea exchanged glances with Ron, Heifels, and the others. She sneered. I don't think you want to talk at all. Pegatron laughed. Since that's the case, I'll get justice for my subordinates. He stopped smiling and coldly waved his hand. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Attack! Both sides gave the order. The battle was on the verge of breaking out. The eyes of the Balarax Academy's students turned blood-red. The knights and warriors standing at the front threw down their torches and pulled out their weapons from their spatial bags. They roared and charged at the Soaring Dragon Academy. The Soaring Dragon Academy wasn't willing to be outdone. The Earth Dragon let out a deafening roar. It raised its 4 hooves and charged at the Balarax Academy. Kill! Battle cries shook the sky. The densely packed students were like waves. Wave after wave, they charged forward with all their might. Boom! 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 Smoke rose again, and the streets of Balavax were once more filled with a deafening roar. Everywhere, flames burned. Shea, Heifels, and the others charged at the front. Do-chi revolved around their bodies as they clashed with the Dragon Knights of the Soaring Dragon Academy. These people were not weak. Very quickly, they suppressed the arrogance of the Soaring Dragon Academy. What are the professions in the Balarax Academy? Without a doubt, they were magicians. Magicians were once the pride of the Balarax Academy. They chanted in low voices, and all sorts of magical elements were mobilized. Release. Under Kadina's command, countless magic bullets soared into the sky. Like beautiful fireworks, they fell on the Dragon Knights of Soaring Dragon Academy. The bombardment of nearly 1,000 spells stunned the Dragon Knights. The Earth Dragons whined, and many of the Dragon Knights couldn't control the panicked Earth Dragons and ran around in the crowd. Another wave of magic attacks. Dragon Knight Porne Gap was torn in their formation. Damn it! Piguterin was furious. Every time they fought, the magicians of the Balarax Academy would bring them great trouble. The most important thing right now was to deal with them as quickly as possible. In order to deal with these magicians, they had to break through their defensive line. This defensive line was built by Shea, Hefels and the others. It was extremely sturdy. Although they didn't have Paladin Mochlin, they had an even more troublesome necromancer Ron. Charge with me! Piguterin clamped his legs together, and the T-Rex rushed forward like the wind. Its thick claws caused the ground to tremble. One student after another was sent flying. The T-Rex was unstoppable. It could be said that it was invincible here. Shea and Hefels exchanged glances. They both summoned their mounts. Shea summoned a silver-winged Pegasus, and Hefels summoned a long-fanged tiger. "Let's get rid of this guy together," Shea said. "All right." In the face of a great enemy, Hefels also abandoned their past grudges. What the Balarax Academy needed now was cooperation. The silver-winged Pegasus flapped its wings and rushed into the air. The long-fanged tiger roared and pounced at Piguterin. In front of the 8-ton beast, Shea and Hefels' mounts seemed a bit small. Even if it was 2 against 1, Piguterin still had the upper hand. "Ron, are you all right?" Aurora ran to Ron's side and asked with concern. Ron shook his head and straightened his body. "I'm fine." Aurora looked at Ron's current state and advised, "Ron, it's better if you don't do anything. Rest for a bit. Leave this to us." Looking at the chaotic battlefield, Ron's eyes fell on Shea and Hefels. He frowned slightly. "No, I can't rest now. That guy riding a rank 6 T-Rex is too scary." Ron's eyes were full of raging flames. "I have to help them." "But your body..." Aurora frowned. Ron's body might not be able to withstand such a high-intensity battle. "I can still hold on." Ron threw out a sentence, rode on the summoned skeleton warrior, added a skeleton exhilarating spell, and rushed out directly. Aurora took a deep breath, picked up her bow, and joined the battle. "Ha ha ha!" Piguterin laughed wildly. "Delightful! This is delightful! Hefels, Shea, the 2 of you together won't be my match." Saying this, the huge T-Rex's tail whipped up and whipped Hefels' tusked tiger to the side. At the same time, Piguterin raised his greatsword with both hands and faced Shea head-on. Hefels was shocked. "This guy's strength is much stronger than before." While they were talking, a white figure flashed past the corner of Hefels' eyes. This white figure quickly passed by him, holding a sharp spear and attacking Piguterin. "Ron." Hefels was shocked at first, then became ecstatic. Don't be fooled by this guy's appearance. His strength made Hefels admire him. Piguterin also noticed Ron and laughed maliciously. "You've come as well. Go to hell with them." The Tyrannosaurus Rex opened his bloody mouth and bit towards Ron. Poisoned bone dagger. Ron was incomparably calm. A green light condensed in his hand. That green light was extremely fast and stabbed into the T-Rex's hard as iron skin. It only pierced a little before it couldn't go any further. Damn it! Piguterin didn't think much of it at first, but now he had a bad feeling. After forcing the poison out with great difficulty, Shea rushed over from the sky. After beating back Shea, she rode the silver-winged Pegasus into the air. At this time, Ron and Heifels once again pounced on her. The three powerhouses of the Soaring Dragon Academy joined hands and suppressed the T-Rex's arrogance, causing Piguterin to cry out in anger. The Dragon Knights couldn't tear through the Balarax Academy's defensive line. After being bombarded by the magicians behind them, they gradually showed signs of collapse. One by one, the Earth Dragons were seriously injured by the magicians and returned to the summoning space. The Dragon Knights became generals without an army, their fighting strength greatly reduced. At this time, Piguterin was fighting alone against the three powerhouses of the Balarax Academy, but he was clearly powerless. Facing the fierce attacks of Heifels, the flying Shea, and the crafty and vicious Ron, he quickly showed signs of fatigue. Letting out a light breath, Ron's gaze became awe-inspiring. He chanted in a low voice. Black gas coiled around his body, and a green light shone from his eyes, making him look extremely sinister in the dark night. Vengeful spirits slumbering in the graveyard, awaken, my servant. Accept my summons and eliminate the enemies in front of you for me. Following Ron's chant, the skeleton magicians crawled out from the ground one by one. Looking from afar, it was a ghastly white expanse. These things are coming out again. Piguterin was greatly shaken. This time, things were a little bad. Get out of the way, let me do it, Ron loudly said to Shea and Heifels. More than 200 skeleton magicians moved at the same time. One magic after another soared into the air and fell to the ground. Explosions rang out one after another. Beautiful flowers bloomed on the T-Rex's body. The T-Rex bellowed, trying to rush out of the magic encirclement. Want to leave? No way. Ron immediately noticed Piguterin's movements. Bone prisons rose from the ground, firmly trapping Piguterin and the Tyrannosaurus Rex inside. Damn it! Bastard, you bastard! Piguterin finally understood what Ron was trying to do. He did his best to destroy the ghastly white bone prisons that rose from the ground. Under the T-Rex's attacks, the bone prisons were easily shattered. However, Ron quickly summoned another bone prison, trapping the T-Rex once again. Don't forget that on the other side, spells were falling like rain. Piguterin could no longer care about anything else. On the other side, Shea and Heifels were waiting with bated breath. It's no use. These low-level spells are useless against my T-Rex. Once I rush out, you'll just wait for your deaths. Piguterin shouted crazily in the smoke. How could it be so simple? Slowly raising his hand, Ron's eyes revealed a trace of a smile. He moved once again. Curse, damage amplification, a mental attack silently seeped out, and Piguterin was unknowingly hit just like that. At this moment, Ron had already learned his lesson. He no longer scattered the power of the curse, and instead concentrated it on Piguterin. Curse magic was a mental attack. This mental attack had a trace of an illusion, affecting the opponent's vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. When the five senses were successfully deceived, the curse magic would take effect. For example, darkening astral vision and weakening were to make the enemy feel that they couldn't see anything, or that they had no strength to attack. These psychological cues would affect them and weaken their fighting strength. The so-called art of curses was a mysterious thing. Every art of curses was different. In the end, it all boiled down to the word comprehension. Roar. Chapter 160. Everyone knew that they were going to fight with the Soaring Dragon Academy. The students of the Balarax Academy gathered at the center of the Academy's plaza. Aurora gathered a group of people. Most of them were new students of the Academy, and the number was still increasing. Search for the latest updates. At this time, another group of people came from the other side of the Academy. Aurora looked at them and saw that the one leading them was Firth High. See, their people were mainly senior students. These people walked in an orderly manner towards Aurora. Aurora said, "You're here." Heifels nodded. "Let's go." Aurora didn't want to talk nonsense. At this time, she was burning with anxiety. It had already been half an hour since she returned to the academy. She didn't know how Ron was doing. At this time, a deafening sound came from the other side of the academy's plaza. Ta-ta-ta, heavy boots with a metallic texture stepped on the ground, making a neat sound. Judging from the sound, there were at least a few hundred people. Aurora was stunned. She asked Heifels, "Are they your people?" "No." Heifels was also confused. "My people are already here." Closer, closer. A burst of light illuminated Aurora's eyes. In the darkness, she saw the people coming. Shea. It's actually Shea? Aurora was surprised and happy. She knew that tomorrow was the day of the dormitory finals against Shea. She didn't expect her to come. Heifels also felt strange. No way, Shea also came? The person who came was Shea. Kadena stood beside her. Shea walked forward and smiled. "I'm a member of the Balarax Academy, so I also came." This short sentence dispelled everyone's doubts. Many people secretly sighed in relief. Shea's arrival was like a shot of cardiac stimulant to everyone. Shea's strength was formidable, and she also had a wide network in the academy. With her participation, they would have a greater chance of winning against the Soaring Dragon Academy. Aurora nodded, a trace of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you." Shea smiled. "What are you thanking me for?" "Ron is also my friend. It's my duty to help him." Heifels looked and asked, "Where's Mocklin?" Shea was most afraid of others mentioning this. His face turned red, and he didn't know how to answer. However, Katina said with a smile, "Merklin has a stomachache, so he didn't come." Everyone replied with an "oh." Their stomachs were hurting. Who was he trying to fool? The competition was tomorrow. How could there be such a coincidence? If Shea could think of this, then so could the others. However, at this moment they couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. At this time, footsteps came from the distance. Who is it? Which boss has come this time? The students guessed one after another. "Aurora, sorry I'm late." To everyone's surprise, the person who came was Hera. She smiled and said. Heifels laughed. "With this, the top 4 dorm teams are all gathered." Aurora nodded. Speaking of which, her team had the least number of people. If it was before, not to mention the top 4, Dorm 302 might not even be able to make it to the top 64. But now, Dorm 302 had Ron. "Let's go." Aurora waved her hand. Nearly 1,000 students majestically walked towards the pillar of smoke. Nearly 1,000 people walked on the streets of Balavax, causing pedestrians to avoid them. At the front were Aurora, Heifels, Shea, and Hera. They stared ahead with solemn expressions and surging killing intent. Behind them was a dense crowd of students. They were like an unstoppable flood. Many students had already taken out weapons from their spatial bags and grasped them in their hand. The city was in chaos. Explosions could be heard from time to time. In the distance, magic bullets soared into the sky like beautiful fireworks. On the other side, Ron was in a bitter battle. His injuries were rapidly increasing. Although the soul ring could replenish his soul force, his physical strength was greatly depleted. Under the attacks of nearly 1,000 dragon knights, Ron was gradually unable to hold on. As the skeletons he summoned turned into black smoke and disappeared, he began to fall into a predicament. At this moment, Pegatron was also incomparably shocked. This necromancer's attacks seemed endless. He summoned wave after wave of skeletons, making it impossible for Pegatron to deal with them all. One person, just one person, had fought with nearly 1,000 dragon knights for a full 2 hours. The more the dragon knights fought, the more apprehensive they became. This unknown necromancer was truly too powerful. The skeletons didn't seem to be afraid of death. Wave after wave of skeletons charged out, and it was impossible to kill them all. "Kill him!" This guy is already at his limit, Pegutron shouted. The great sword in his hands shone with a sharp light as he increased the pace of his attacks. Seeing Ron fall into a desperate battle, Homelin couldn't bear to watch. Ron, why don't you let me do it? It's just a mere low-ranked land dragon. I'm confident I can take care of it. Huff, huff, huff. Ron used his bone spear to fling a dragon knight off the land dragon's back. At this moment, he was gasping for breath. His physical strength had almost reached its limit. He gasped for breath as he said, Grandpa Homelin, let me hold on for a little longer. Just a little longer will do, Homelin sighed. Do as you wish. At this moment, Homelin's expression suddenly changed. There are a lot of people coming? They seem to be coming from the academy. Could it be that Aurora and Heifels have brought people here? A glimmer of hope ignited in Ron's eyes. A ray of light suddenly appeared. From the corner of his eye, Ron saw a dragon knight holding a dragon spear shining with golden light. It was piercing towards him, bringing with it a swift and fierce wind. Ron, dodge! Homelin cried out in alarm. Ron dodged to the right, but found that it was as if his body wasn't listening to his orders. He couldn't break free. A thought quickly flashed through his mind. Shit! At this moment, with a whoosh, a rapid arrow suddenly appeared. With a thump, it pierced the dragon knight's arm. The dragon knight screamed and fell to the ground. Ron turned his head and saw Aurora in full military attire. She held a longbow in one hand, the bowstring still trembling. That rapid arrow that broke through the sound barrier was shot by her. Aurora! Ron. Seeing that Ron was fine, Aurora's suspended heart finally calmed down. Her charming eyes stared at Pegutarin as if they were about to spit fire. Pegutarin smiled. Oh, you're finally back? All right, let's see how many people you can call out. A tall figure appeared behind Aurora. It was Heifels. Heifels angrily said, Pegutarin, open your dog eyes and see how many of us are here. The students of the Balarax Academy appeared one after another. They held torches in their hands. In the darkness of the night, the dense flames looked like a fire dragon twisting and turning in the city. So many people, so many of them. The hearts of the Soaring Dragon Academy's dragon knights trembled. Before, they had already been scared witless by Ron. Now that they saw so many people from the Balarax Academy, they were already half afraid before the battle even started. Even Turns and Perdita had fear in their eyes. Pegutarin calmly said, Don't panic. Their numbers are about the same as ours. Don't forget, we are dragon knights. What Pegutarin meant was that although the Balarax Academy had a lot of people, most of them were mages. The dragon knights had an additional earth dragon, which gave them a huge advantage in battle. Touching the earth dragon below them, the dragon knights of the Soaring Dragon Academy finally calmed down. Their eyes also regained a trace of confidence. Yes, they were dragon knights, invincible dragon knight. Even if they suffered at the hands of an unknown necromancer, it was because it was the first time they fought with such a profession. They didn't understand the opponent. A white light shone from Ron's body. His wounds miraculously healed. It was actually Ron who used a healing spell on him. Ron slowly stood up, recovering some of his vitality. Ron, are you all right? Fatty Karachi and the others walked to Ron's side and helped him up. Ron's wounds had already healed and his soul force had also been replenished. The only thing that couldn't be replenished was his physical strength. At this moment, he looked very tired. Pegutarin, what do you want? A crisp voice cut through the tranquility of the night sky. Shea's beautiful face was frosty as she angrily stared at Pegutarin. Ron lightly opened his eyes and looked. Why is she also here? It seems she knows the person riding the T-Rex. Pegutarin was also startled when he saw Shea. Then he laughed and said, Shea, I didn't expect even you to appear. It seems Mocklin is also here. Where is he? Let him come out and meet an old friend. Shea's face sank. This time Mocklin didn't come out. This made her lose face. Piguterin looked around and didn't see Mocklin. He chuckled and said, "Is this guy afraid? Hiding and not daring to come out?" Shea said in a deep voice, "No need for Mocklin, I will deal with you. Piguterin, let me ask you, what do you want? Do you really want to start a war between the two academies?" "Ha ha ha!" Piguterin laughed wildly. "If not for your academy's Ron hitting our people, why would we find trouble with him?" Aurora coldly snorted, "Wasn't it you who started it first?" "I don't care." Piguterin leaned forward and said with a smile, "If this matter is settled like this, I don't need to be the boss anymore." Aurora and Shea looked at each other. Shea understood and said with a cold smile, "Then how do you want to settle this?" "Very simple." Piguterin slammed his two-handed greatsword on the ground and arrogantly said, "Have that necromancer kneel down in front of me and my subordinates and sincerely admit his mistake. This matter will be settled like this. How about it? Am I magnanimous?" When the Dragon Knights of the Soaring Dragon Academy heard this, they roared with laughter. Their laughter was filled with pride. Chapter 161. The beast's body emitted a dazzling light, and in a short moment, it turned into specks of light and disappeared. It returned to the summoning space. Shea and Heifels were pleasantly surprised. Piguterin's T-Rex was heavily injured and couldn't fight, so it automatically returned to the summoning space. Now, as a knight, Piguterin's fighting strength was greatly reduced. Search for the latest updates. Ron faintly smiled. "Piguterin, you don't have a chance." "What? Piguterin lost?" "His Tyrannosaurus Rex is gone. He lost." The Dragon Knights had a trace of alarm in their eyes. In their hearts, the T-Rex Piguterin was an invincible existence. They didn't expect him to lose, and lose so thoroughly. This had never happened before. They had fought with the Balarax Academy many times, and even if they couldn't defeat the T-Rex, they would still be able to retreat. But now, he actually lost. At this time, the situation on the battlefield finally changed. With the fall of the T-Rex, the Soaring Dragon Academy had lost. The morale of the Dragon Knights plummeted, and the students of the Balarax Academy began their counterattack. How could this be? Piguterin was completely dumbfounded. His eyes revealed an expression of disbelief, and his hands and feet trembled uncontrollably. "How could I lose? I am the strongest T-Rex, how could I lose?" Piguterin stood there in a daze, unable to understand. After a long time, his body suddenly twitched, and with a "pu" sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Ron, Heifels, and Shea were all dumbfounded. Wasn't this Piguterin's mental state too weak? He actually fainted just like that. The three looked at each other in dismay. Ron asked, "What do we do now?" "What do we do?" "Continue fighting," Heifels and Shea said in unison. As they spoke, they looked at the other Dragon Knight. The moment Piguterin fell, the students of the Soaring Dragon Academy seemed to have lost their backbone. Their minds were in chaos and their attacks also became disorganized. With the addition of Ron and the other two, the situation became one-sided. The Dragon Knights scattered and fled, some of them abandoning the slow-moving land dragons and running away in fear. The morale of Balarax's students was greatly boosted, and they chased after them. Run. All of the Dragon Knights had the same thought in their minds, and that was to escape back to the Soaring Dragon Academy. This was the safest place for them. We won, we won. The students of the Balarax Academy cheered loudly for their victory. They didn't show any mercy and kept pushing forward. One by one, the students of the Soaring Dragon Academy were knocked down. Some of them were crying and begging for mercy. Some of them were fighting with their lives on the ground. Some of them were fighting while retreating, slowly retreating into the academy. The Soaring Dragon Academy's gate was about 10 meters wide. Outside the gate there were two lifelike flying dragons. The Soaring Dragon Academy was established less than 100 years ago, but it faintly showed signs of surpassing the Balarax Academy. This was because the strongest warriors were born here, Dragon Knights. The Soaring Dragon Academy was also known as the Rocking Dragon Knight. On this day, the powerful Dragon Knights were defeated like a landslide. They were killed by the students of the Balarax Academy. In the Soaring Dragon Academy, the angry students began to destroy everything. Magic bullets flew out from the hands of the Balarax Academy students and exploded on the buildings of the Soaring Dragon Academy. The buildings were set ablaze. Many students woke up from their dreams and were stunned by the scene in front of them. Ron and the others also rushed into the Soaring Dragon Academy. Seeing the scene in front of them, they were also stunned. The students they brought with them were destroying everything as if they had lost control. They didn't have the slightest awareness of a victor. They felt like they were venting their anger. Ron, Shea, Heifels and the others looked at each other in dismay. Ron scratched his head and said, "It seems like we went a bit too far." Heifels didn't think so. What's wrong with that? We defeated the Soaring Dragon Academy in Guangming without any teachers interfering. That year when the Soaring Dragon Academy defeated us, they weren't the same type of people either. Shea muttered to herself, "Even so, I still feel that it's not appropriate. The Soaring Dragon Academy isn't without experts. If we provoke those teachers, it will be troublesome." Heifels smiled. "What's there to be afraid of? As far as I know, the teachers of the two academies usually don't interfere in the disputes between them." Aurora thought for a bit, "But I heard that the Soaring Dragon Academy's headmaster Montego is a very protective person. If we anger him, I'm afraid we won't be able to bear the consequences." Heifels also felt that the situation was serious. "Why don't we separate our people? In any case, we've already achieved our goal." Everyone nodded in agreement. Thus, they split up to stop those students from wantonly destroying the Soaring Dragon Academy. The idea of the few leaders was good, but it wasn't easy to put it into practice. All the students of the Balarax Academy were already in chaos. They didn't recognize each other and only recognized their own leader. They didn't recognize anyone else's leader, so they wouldn't listen to his orders. Ron and the others were so anxious that they were sweating profusely. However, it didn't have much effect. The destruction was still ongoing. However, they were also met with the counterattack of some of the Soaring Dragon Academy's students. The situation was chaotic. In the Soaring Dragon Academy's headmaster Montego's dormitory, a series of hurried knocks sounded. Dong dong dong, who is it? Montego was sleeping soundly. When he heard the knock, he immediately got up and opened the door. Seeing the teacher standing at the door, he immediately became dissatisfied. "Didn't I tell you not to bother me if there's nothing important? Really, I can't even sleep peacefully." That teacher was out of breath. "Headmaster. Headmaster. Not good." Students killed their way in. Montego frowned. "Speak clearly. What students killed their way in?" The teacher anxiously said, "It's Balarax Academy's students who killed their way in." Montego replied with an "oh." Just as he was about to close the door, his face suddenly stiffened. He involuntarily said, "What did you say? Balarax Academy's students killed their way in?" That teacher nodded. Just a few simple words, and he was already sweating profusely. "What happened?" Montego's expression was grim. "Wasn't it Piguterin who went to deal with it? Where's Piguterin?" Piguterin was defeated." That teacher stuttered. "He was defeated by the Balarax Academy's students. Our people were completely defeated and fled back. The Balarax Academy's students chased after us. Right now, they are destroying everything in the academy." Montego turned around and looked out of the window. Outside the window, he saw raging flames. Explosions were unceasingly ringing out and huge pillars of smoke were rising from the place where the flames were burning. He looked at the sky. It was already early in the morning. Montego's face sank. "How long have they been causing trouble?" The teacher said, "It's been quite a while. Our teachers didn't make a move, right? Montego asked again. No, our teachers are very restrained. That's good. Montego nodded. There was no trace of a smile on his face. Let's go and take a look. On the roof of a dormitory of the Soaring Dragon Academy, several figures were standing on top of it. They were the teachers of the Soaring Dragon Academy. They were shaking their heads. No one knew what they were discussing. Their faces were filled with helplessness. This is too much. These students are simply lawless. They actually dared to break into our academy and wreak havoc. A young teacher was indignant. The teachers of the Soaring Dragon Academy were also expert. With their strength, they could easily stop these students from going crazy. However, they clearly didn't do so. Forget it. Another older teacher helplessly said, This is a matter between our headmaster Montego and the Balarax Academy's headmaster Platts. They already had an agreement. As teachers, we can't interfere in the matters between students. He paused for a moment. I remember that one year when our Soaring Dragon Academy broke into the Balarax Academy, their teachers didn't interfere. That young teacher was somewhat puzzled. What are they doing? Who knows? The older teacher smiled. Maybe it's a game between the experts of the sacred domain. We can't guess what they are thinking. The younger teacher said, You mean to say that we should just let them destroy this place? The older teacher smiled. Don't worry, someone will come out to solve this. The students of the Balarax Academy were in a killing frenzy. In the chaotic crowd, Ron did his best to persuade them. There were several times when he almost took action. However, there were even more students who didn't listen to him. For example, Hefels's subordinates and Shea's subordinate. These people didn't need to give face to Ron. At this time, Ron heard Homelin's warning, Be careful, a very powerful aura is coming. What? Ron was shocked. Could it be the teachers of the Soaring Dragon Academy? No. Homelin stared at the direction of a tall tower in the distance and said, It's an expert of the sacred domain. Ron was in a daze when his heart suddenly jumped. Very good. At this moment, a majestic voice sounded in everyone's ears. The voice was not loud, but when it rang in everyone's ears, it was deafening. Who is this voice? Everyone started to look for the source of the voice, but they didn't see even half a shadow. Some of the students of Soaring Dragon Academy, however, had a happy expression on their face. This was their dean, Golden Flying Dragon Knight, Lord Montegot, a Saint Realm expert. The voice began to speak. Students of the Balarax Academy, please go back. This isn't a place for you to come. F***CK. Who do you think you are to be so arrogant? If I leave just because you tell me to, I won't have any face. The students of the Balarax Academy were in high spirit. Hearing those words, they raised their middle fingers. At this time, an extremely terrifying aura came from all directions. This aura was so powerful that it made people's heart palpitate. I am a pornographic novel. My body can't move. Some of the students' faces were filled with fear. Many of them reluctantly turned to look at the source of the aura. Their lips trembled and they couldn't even speak clearly. Chapter 162. Roar. A loud roar resounded, shaking everyone's body. Although the sound came from afar, traces of irresistible power could be felt, making people unable to resist. A black shadow appeared in the sky. It was covered in golden scales and had 4 long horns on its head. A pair of huge wings took up almost half of its body. 4 thick and powerful claws emitted a golden light. Its long tail was stretched out and swinging in the air, controlling the direction of its flight. Search for the latest updates. Wyvern. It's a wyvern. It's the Dean's Golden Wyvern, the students screamed. The students of Soaring Dragon Academy were filled with joy while the students of Balarax Academy were filled with fear. They knew what the appearance of this wyvern meant. Wyvern was a strange beast from the sacred domain. It was the mount of the Dean of Soaring Dragon Academy, Monty got. Its appearance meant that the Dean had personally made a move. Offending a powerful expert from the sacred domain was not a good thing. The golden wyvern flew a circle above everyone's head. The students of Ballarak's academy felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. The pressure of the sacred domain expert made them not dare to move. Damn, it's too powerful. Heifels swallowed his saliva. When that wyvern flew above my head, my heart almost stopped. Me too, Shea said in a daze. Pornographic Novelron took a deep breath and said, Did the Dean of Soaring Dragon Academy personally make a move? No. Impossible, Heifels said in shock. If that's the case, then we don't need to go back alive. A powerful expert from the sacred domain wouldn't lower his status like this, right? Montygot saw the destruction of Soaring Dragon Academy and was furious. These students didn't know what was good for them. Don't they know that this is my territory? No matter what, I have to teach you a lesson. Montygot's eyes flashed with killing intent. His robe fluttered without any wind. Frozen 1,000 miles. An extremely cold aura rushed over from afar, enveloping everyone in it. The temperature in the air suddenly dropped to 0, and it was still dropping. A thin layer of ice formed on the originally flat ground. The ice became thicker and thicker, freezing everyone's feet in an instant. I can't move, one of the Balrog's students sobbed. He tried his best to pull his foot out of the ice, but it was as if his foot had taken root and wouldn't budge. Me too, how terrifying. Whoa. My lord, I know I was wrong. The students of the Ballarak's academy begged for mercy. Many refused to give up and struggled with all their might, but the ice seemed to have a mind of its own. It climbed higher and higher, and soon, his entire leg was frozen. Some people used fire magic to burn the ice, but the ice did not seem to be afraid of fire. No matter how hard they tried, it did not melt. Heifels and Shea were also in trouble. However, the two of them were very obedient and didn't dare to move. They knew that the power of the sacred domain experts was irresistible. Ron also struggled a few times, but half of his body was frozen. He couldn't help but curse. Damn it, what the hell is this thing? It's actually so powerful? This is a domain. Homelin took a look. This is the water domain of that sacred domain expert. Don't struggle, it's useless. With your current strength, you can't break free, then what do we do? Ron was a little flustered. Homelin muttered, After what you did, that sacred domain expert should be a little angry. However, I don't think he'll disregard his status and make a move. Homelin paused. If he really makes a move, I'm confident I can escape, but the others, Homelin's words were very clear. He could control Ron's body to escape, but the others might not. Ron's heart sank when he heard this. At this time, another voice came from the sky. Montygot, this is just a child playing around. There's no need to be so serious, right? Is that Dean Platts? Ron jumped in joy when he heard this voice. However, he suddenly remembered that half of his body was frozen. Ron looked around blankly, but he couldn't see anyone. Not only Dean Platts, but Montygot also didn't appear. But if you look for them, they're far away using energy to transmit their voices. You won't be able to find them, Homelin said. Montygot was silent when he heard Platts's voice. After a long time, he faintly said, Your student seems to be a little too much, right? Platts laughed. This is a small matter. Let's do it. I'll bear the losses of the Soaring Dragon Academy. How about it? Montygot was silent for a while. After a long time, he said, Very good. As he spoke, he withdrew his power, and the snow-white ice shattered with a bang. The temperature in the air also returned to its original state, and the heavy pressure on everyone's hearts also disappeared. Ron let out a sigh of relief. He stood up and looked at the people who were also in a state of shock. Montygot's face was gloomy. In this confrontation with Platts, he lost. The great academies had already agreed that the matters of the students should be settled by the students. The teachers couldn't interfere. But this time, not only did he interfere, he even did it himself. As for the losses of the Soaring Dragon Academy, it only helped him regain some face. How could a powerhouse of the sacred domain be lacking in money? Platz's laughter came from afar. Students of the Balarax Academy, come back. The matter is over. Hearing the dean's voice, the students of the Balarax Academy finally relaxed. However, they still felt a lingering fear when they recalled the scene just now. They felt as if they had just walked through hell. The students of the Balarax Academy dispersed one after another. They left the Soaring Dragon Academy. No one dared to act rashly. Montagot's action just now had a very good effect. The students of the Soaring Dragon Academy also crawled up from the ground. The priests began to cast healing spells. Some teachers also joined in to save people. See, I'm right? The matter is settled. On the roof, the old teacher said with a smile. The young teacher shrugged. I really don't know what those two big shots were thinking. Let's go. Who cares what they think? The old teacher said with a smile. Let's go and count the students. At this time, the sky was already bright. The conflict between the Soaring Dragon Academy and the Balarax Academy had ended. The students of the Balarax Academy withdrew from the Soaring Dragon Academy one after another. Although they were the victors, they didn't have too many happy expressions. They were scared by Headmaster Montagot just now. Ron, Heifels, Shea, and Hera walked in the front. They were also dejected. When they returned to the Balarax Academy, they saw a person with a white beard standing at the entrance with a smile on his face. If it wasn't Platz, who else could it be? Ron and the others happily went up and surrounded Platz. Headmaster Platz, Headmaster Platz. Good job, students. Platz smiled when he saw them. You've made me proud. Haha, you actually killed your way into the Soaring Dragon Academy. Looking at Ron and the others, Platz slowly nodded. I heard that they were the ones who started it. Hee, next time you meet them, don't be polite. Beat them up ruthlessly. Yes, Headmaster Platz. Ron smiled. The feeling of being protected by an expert from the sacred domain was indeed different. At this time, Vice Headmaster Dabo hurriedly ran over. He looked at Ron and said, Headmaster, the ranking tournament finals will be held today. The teachers are all waiting. Ranking tournament finals? Platz slapped his head and said, I almost forgot. Today is the day of the finals between Dorm 302 and Dorm 787. Look at my memory. Platz smiled at Ron. Good job. You actually managed to compete with Dorm 787. This also means that you have decent strength. Good luck, Ron. I'm waiting to see your performance. Before leaving, Platz smiled and said before turning around and leaving. After Platz left, Dabo looked at the tired Ron and asked with concern, How are you? Ron, are you alright? Hearing Dabo's words, Aurora cried out in alarm. Not good. She ran over and grabbed Dabo's hand. Vice Headmaster, this. Ron fought fiercely for an entire night and used up a lot of energy. How is he going to fight in the ranking tournament? So it's like this. Dabo looked at Ron and frowned. Vice Headmaster, I think we can request for the tournament to be postponed until Ron recovers. Manny said from the side. Other than Ron, everyone in Dorm 302 fought fiercely for an entire night. I've used up all my battle chi. If we fight in this state, we'll definitely lose. Dabo twirled his beard. It's not impossible to request for the tournament to be postponed. According to the rules of the ranking tournament, both sides have to agree. Since you're the one who requested it, you'll need Dorm 787 to agree. Moreover, Dorm 787 fought fiercely for an entire night. They must have used up a lot of energy. Dabo said as he looked at Shea. Shea looked at Ron and then looked at Dabs. He pondered for a moment before nodding and saying, "Well, anyway, we have to take a break, so let's postpone it. The time of the match is set for tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, the finals between our dormitory 787 and dormitory 302. Shea's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. "Ron, when the time comes, you must not disappoint us." "We look forward to fighting you with all our strength," Ron nodded. "All right, when the time comes, I'll definitely do my best," Dabu smiled. "All right, since both sides have agreed, then the postponement of the tournament." Dabu was halfway through when he was interrupted by a voice. "I don't agree." Chapter 163. Shea didn't think that Mocklin would interfere at this time. She was so angry that her face turned red. "Mocklin, are you crazy?" "I'm not crazy." Mocklin had a faint smile on his face. "According to the ranking tournament's rules, this matter can only be decided by the captain. I'm sorry, but I'm the captain of dorm 787. I don't agree. Mocklin, I'm telling you, my do-chi has already been used up. Kadeena's magic is also the same. Even if the others don't have much left, we don't have the ability to continue the ranking tournament," Shea said in a sharp voice. "I know." Mocklin smiled. "I didn't participate in the battle with the Soaring Dragon Academy last night. I'm conserving my energy, so my current condition is very good. Vice Principal Debussy, according to the tournament's rules, can I not agree to postpone the match?" Mocklin looked at Debussy. Debussy thought for a bit and helplessly nodded. Mocklin's action was too shameful. As the Academy's #1 sacred knight, he actually acted so lowly. The surrounding students' gazes towards him had already changed, turning into disdain and contempt. You're taking advantage of people's difficulties. You're shameless." Shea's face turned red. Looking at the surrounding gazes of disdain, she wished she could find a hole to hide in. However, Mocklin acted as if he didn't see those gazes. Looking at Ron, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "See, the rules are the rules, not a single word can be changed. Ron, how about it? I don't agree to postpone the match. Either you fight now or you admit defeat immediately. Hee. If you don't have the confidence, it's better for you to admit defeat as soon as possible." Mocklin used the method of provocation. This was clearly looting a burning house. Taking advantage of the fact that the opponent didn't have any do-chi to force him to admit defeat, this kind of action was close to shameless. Many of the surrounding students began to whisper, Is this Mocklin? How can he be so shameless? Simply shameless, shameful." Ron's gaze focused as he stared at Mocklin, as if he wanted to see through his thoughts. Mocklin smiled and calmly looked at him, as if these gazes weren't looking at him. Taking a deep breath, Ron slowly nodded his head. "Okay, I agree, let's start the match." A smile finally appeared on Mocklin's face as he breathed a sigh of relief. "Ron, I knew you would agree. You didn't disappoint me. Ron, you can't. Your power is a pornographic novel. It hasn't recovered yet," Aurora said anxiously. S right, wheat S, it's the second place seconds already, S not bad you S T's right. It eyes, it says, it's eyes, I let's continue. Aurora sighed. "Since you've decided, I won't say anything. But let me tell you in advance, I don't have much strength left." "I don't have much either," Manny said. "I still have some." Fatty thought for a moment and said, but his words were ignored by everyone. Lansam gently shook his head. "Ron, I don't have any magic left." Lansam's last sentence was the most fatal. Priests had no magic, which meant that there was no way to heal. "Don't worry. They're probably the same." Ron smiled and pointed at Shea and the others. Shea sighed and didn't say anything. "But Mocklin's do-chi hasn't been depleted at all, in your current state," Aurora said worriedly. "It's fine." Ron made an okay gesture. "I'm a necromancer, the power I use is different from yours. It's neither magic nor do-chi, My strength hasn't decreased by much." Hearing this, Mocklyn's eyebrows suddenly jumped. That trace of panic was well concealed by him, but in his heart, he was secretly worried. Heifels laughed, patted Mocklyn's shoulder, and said sarcastically, "Mocklyn, congratulations." Mocklyn's face was indifferent, like an ancient well without ripples. "Thank you." Daba lightly sighed. "Since it's like this, you should prepare." In the arena, there was already a sea of people. The students who had finished fighting with the Soaring Dragon Academy were all sitting in the spectator seats, watching the final match of the ranking tournament. This was the battle to determine the champion and the runner-up. The students were all excitedly discussing, but when they talked about Mocklyn, they all showed a look of disdain. They all thought that he took advantage of other people's difficulties, and was too tasteless. But when it came to Ron, the majority of the comments were positive, and many people directly cheered for him. The two teams slowly stepped into the arena. Other than Mocklyn, who was full of energy, the others all had tired faces. The aftereffects of an entire night of fierce fighting were finally showing. Ron stopped Aurora and the others, and said in a deep voice, "Let me do it." "What?" Aurora was surprised. "You mean to let you fight alone?" Ron nodded. "Your do-chi is almost depleted, let me fight alone." Aurora also thought about it. Their do-chi was almost depleted, and there was no difference whether they went up or not. Maybe if they went up, they would even become Ron's burden. Shea and the others also don't have much do-chi left. The only one we have to be careful of is Mocklyn. Aurora lowered her voice. "If we can't beat him, then forget it. We don't want this championship." Ron nodded and smiled, revealing a row of white teeth. "I will do my best. Of course I won't try to be brave. As for the championship, if we do our best, there is still a glimmer of hope. If we don't, then there will be no hope at all." The soul ring was Ron's greatest reliance. It could replenish his soul force at any time, allowing him to be in an invincible position. What Ron was worried about was that he didn't know how long his physical strength could last, and there was no place to replenish it. Aurora nodded and said, "Be careful." Then she led the few people from room 302 down the arena, leaving only Ron in the arena. The surrounding students were stunned. "No way, this Ron is actually going up alone? I don't know if Mocklyn will duel with him one-on-one, just like Heifels. If Mocklyn doesn't agree, won't he have to deal with the 8 people from room 787 alone?" The students whispered, but Mocklyn was overjoyed. Only Shea sighed faintly. The teacher who was acting as the referee was surprised to see Ron walk up the arena alone, and asked, "You're alone again?" Ron nodded, "Yes." The teacher's gaze turned to Mocklyn, and Mocklyn said with a smile, "The 8 of us will fight together." This meant that it was his business if Ron wanted to fight alone. As soon as he said this, many students in the audience cursed Mocklyn for being shameless, and that he was a disgrace to the Academy's #1 dormitory. Even many people from room 787 were dissatisfied, and Shea was one of them. She looked at Mocklyn with deep disappointment. Was this person still the Mocklyn she knew? In the VIP seats on the arena's tower, Nikolai muttered to himself for a while, and suddenly said, "This Mocklyn is not simple, there must be a conspiracy." Platz nodded slightly. Not many people knew that Mocklyn was the holy son of the Holy See, and he was one of them. He knew very well that the Holy See's goal was to kill Ron, but he couldn't stop the ranking tournament from progressing. There was another reason why Platz didn't stop the ranking tournament from progressing, and that was because he believed that Ron wasn't someone who would be killed so easily. If worst came to worst, he'd just admit defeat. The referee looked at both sides and inwardly sighed. He said, "Since both sides have agreed, then the final round of the Balarax Academy's ranking tournament will now begin." Everyone took out their weapons from their dimensional bags, and Ron also took out his dark gold bone staff. 8 against 1, everyone's expressions were different. Mocklyn had a sinister smile on his face, while Shea's expression was grim. She said, "Ron, even if you fight alone, I won't show any mercy. If you're afraid, then surrender as soon as possible. Ron nodded seriously. I will. Bring it on. At this moment, Merklin moved. He suddenly used charge and rushed towards Ron. His speed was so fast that it caught Ron off guard. Ron had long since been prepared. His expression was solemn as he took a step back and silently chanted an incantation. A bone shield appeared out of thin air, blocking in front of him. Boom! Moklin's heavy scepter smashed into Ron's bone shield. Faint cracks appeared on the tough bone shield. Moklin's attack had opened the curtains to the duel. Moklin's eyes were full of malevolence. Ron, I want you to die in this battle. Although Ron found it strange why Moklin was always targeting him, in the face of his death threat, Ron still showed considerable magnanimity. Very well, if you have the ability. With a twist of his wrist, a white bone spear appeared out of thin air. Ron held it in his palm, and his eyes flashed. He actually used the bone spear to stab at the bone shield summoned by Moklin. Chee! The bone spear penetrated the bone shield and went straight through it, attacking Moklin. Moklin was slightly startled. He did not expect Ron to have such an attack method. In his days, the bone spear had already pierced through his body. Moklin's brows slightly wrinkled. There was already a bloody hole in his body. In the time it took to breathe in and out, the two had exchanged blows like lightning. It was clear that Moklin was one step behind. Moklin's heart trembled. He had still underestimated this ancient necromancer. In his carelessness, he had actually been injured. What he did not expect even more was that Ron, who had fought fiercely for an entire night, still had such powerful fighting strength. Too careless! Moklin silently warned himself. A pure white light rose from Moklin's body. Soon, his wounds healed. Apart from the large hole left by the bone spear in his clothes, there were no other traces of injury. The priest of room 787 acted and healed Moklin. Chapter 164. At this moment, Shea gritted her teeth and launched an attack at Ron. Kadena gripped her magic staff tightly and held a magic water ball in her hand. In an instant, the 8 people of Dorm 787 pounced on Ron like wolves and tigers, launching fierce attacks at him. At the same time, Ron didn't show any signs of weakness. His eyes flashed with a green light as he chanted in a low voice, summoning a large wave of skeletons. Be careful, these skeletons aren't easy to deal with. Shea had suffered at Ron's hands before, so she hurriedly shouted. Although her relationship with Ron had improved a long time ago, they were both serving their own masters now. She had no choice but to stand on the opposite side. In fact, she didn't need to remind them. Everyone clearly knew Ron's strength, and no one would treat him as trash. On the contrary, no one dared to lower their guard when facing him. Kill, kill. Boom, boom, boom. The battle of 1 against 8 immediately reached its climax. Ron pushed his soul energy to the limit, and the skeletal warriors, skeleton warriors, skeleton mages, and skeleton warriors poured out as if they were free. One after another, they fearlessly attacked Dorm 787. Moklin's defense was terrifyingly high after casting the Holy Shield. He completely ignored those frail skeleton warriors. With a swing of his scepter, flowers bloomed on the heads of those skeleton warriors, and the entire skeleton turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared. The only ones that could cause trouble for him were the skeleton warriors and skeleton mages. A paladin's scepter was an extremely terrifying weapon. It was between a close combat weapon and a magic weapon. In other words, it could be used in both close combat and long-range attacks. Compared to other close combat weapons, almost all paladins didn't hesitate to choose the scepter. A paladin equipped with a scepter was an extremely terrifying existence. As the skeletons were destroyed one by the people of Dorm 787, Ron wasn't angry at all. His skeletons were originally meant to be used up. In the Soul Ring, He had as much soul energy as he wanted, so Ron wasn't afraid of wasting it. The fierce battle began, and the audience's emotions were ignited. The battle on the field made their blood boil. Ron's thin and weak body stood in the field, riding a skeleton warrior. Looking at his high-spirited appearance, he seemed to be at ease fighting 1 against 8. Go! Go Ron, go! Beat them to the ground! The audience on the field cheered for Ron one-sidedly. 8 people from dormitory 787 against 1 person from dormitory 302. No one was convinced. Seeing Ron's heroic performance, regardless of whether he won or lost, everyone couldn't help but cheer for Ron. When the cheers for Ron entered the ears of the people of dorm 787, everyone felt as if their hearts were being pricked by needles. Not long ago, these flowers and cheers were for them, but now the situation was reversed. Except for one person, Mocklin. His expression was normal, and he didn't pay attention to the surrounding noise. He seized the opportunity to attack, and one skeleton warrior after another was defeated by him. At first, Ron relied on his unlimited soul energy to maintain the balance of the battle, but gradually, Ron felt that his strength was falling short of his desire. The drawbacks of his insufficient physical strength were slowly revealed. After summoning a wave of skeleton mages, his breathing began to become rapid. Ron's soul energy was unlimited, but his physical strength wasn't. Because of the fierce battle last night, he was panting not long after the battle began. On the contrary, Shea was a knight, so her physical strength wasn't bad. However, she also fought fiercely last night, and her do-chi was almost exhausted. At this time, her do-chi was clearly weakened by a lot. It was the same for the others. Katina simply stopped attacking. She had already used up all of her magic power. As the people of Dorm 787 withdrew from the attack, the pressure on Ron was greatly reduced. The bravest and most valiant person on the battlefield was still Mocklin. With his strength, killing those skeletons was like chopping vegetables. No matter how many skeletons Ron summoned, they were all destroyed by him in one blow. Divine light, Mocklin took a step forward and raised the scepter in his hand. In an instant, the dark gold scepter emitted a blazing white light. When the skeletons came into contact with the white light, they melted like snow in spring, directly turning into black smoke and disappearing. Ron's face turned cold. He felt that the opponent's power was faintly restraining him. After the wave of skeletons was cleared, a large open space opened up in front of Mocklin. With a sinister smile, he fiercely pounced forward. Be careful, Ron. This divine power is very harmful to you. Homelin cautioned carefully. Ron nodded. At this time, Mocklin's figure had already rushed forward. Ron held a bone spear in one hand and a bone shield in the other as he fought with Mocklin. Below the stage, the people of Dorm 302 watched nervously. Aurora and Manny hugged each other tightly, their eyes filled with worry. Ron, if you can't win, don't force yourself. I don't want you to get hurt. It's good that we're runners-up, runners-up. At this time, a tall knight instructor walked in front of them. He squatted down and fiddled with something. What are you doing? Aurora asked curiously. I'm setting up a magic barrier, the knight instructor said without turning his head. A magic barrier was a type of magic array. It had a restrictive effect on some people's actions. For example, a soundproof barrier could isolate sound. The magic barrier set up by the knight instructor was to prevent the people of Dorm 302 from moving. Aurora immediately understood. Her almond eyes widened as she said angrily, You suspect that we're cheating? Yes, the knight instructor said coldly. I don't care if you're cheating or not. It's always good to be careful. If you don't intend to cheat, this thing is useless to you. This knight instructor was the one who had been watching Ron last time. Ever since that battle, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was strange. He became more and more certain that Ron was cheating. However, he couldn't find anything that could be used against him. This time, he might as well directly seal the people of Dorm 302 with a magic barrier. Aurora was speechless. She could only snort coldly and ignore him. The night instructor didn't say much either. He buried his head in setting up the barrier. The battle in the arena was still going on. The audience cheered one wave after another. They were all shocked by Ron's tenacity. Huff, huff, huff. Ron panted heavily. Everyone could clearly see that his physical strength had reached its limit. However, he still didn't lose. At this time, only Mocklin and Ron's duel was left. Ron's body was on the verge of collapse, as if he was going to fall at any time. Mocklin sneered in his heart. Hee, it seems that it's about time. In a while, you'll die in my hands. Damn, this guy is clearly at the end of his rope, but he's still so strong. Mocklin couldn't help but curse. At the same time, he quickened his pace of attack. At this time, Ron's eyes suddenly lit up. A small cyan dagger silently pierced toward Mocklin. The dagger's angle was extremely tricky. It just happened to be between the flaws in the sacred shield defense. Mocklin was shocked. However, at this time, he didn't have time to dodge. The dagger pierced into Mocklin's thigh. Immediately after, a numb feeling came. His right leg didn't listen to him for a moment. Not good, the dagger is poisoned. Mocklin was shocked. Ron's attack succeeded. He immediately launched a counterattack. Unfortunately, his counterattack was a little weak. Mocklin forced Ron to retreat. He calmly pulled out the dagger from his thigh and used his Do Chi to force out the poison. At this time, he turned around and looked at the priest in his dorm. His meaning was very clear. I need treatment. Dorm 787 had a long-term tacit understanding. The priest naturally understood what he meant. However, he lightly shrugged his shoulders. His meaning was that he didn't have any magic power. Mocklin was helpless. He could only nod his head. He took a deep breath and raised his scepter high. Self-healing. A white light shone. Mocklin's whole body also turned white. At this moment, the wounds on Mocklin's body miraculously healed. There was no trace of injury. Paladins could heal themselves, unlike priests who could heal not only themselves but also others. Paladins could only heal themselves and not others. That was why it was called self-healing. This was also the strength of paladins. They had a super high defense. Coupled with the ability to heal themselves, paladins deserved to be called a heaven-defying profession. It was said that in the mercenary world, many paladins went out alone to hunt strange beasts. This profession had the talent to act alone. Self-healing consumed a lot more magic power than a priest's healing. Mocklin's face showed a trace of fatigue after using the healing skill. He smiled and said, "Ron, we can continue." Ron's eyes widened in surprise. It wasn't that he didn't know that paladins could heal themselves. It was just that Mocklin's difficulty was beyond his imagination. At this time, his body began to tremble. His remaining physical strength could no longer support his movement. Mocklin didn't hesitate. He launched the final attack on Ron. He was determined to defeat Ron in this round of attacks. A hammer-like object condensed in the palm of his hand. Mocklin's face was cold. He swung his hand in an arc and the hammer flew out of his hand. Boom! Ron's bone shield finally couldn't hold on any longer and shattered. At this time, his body swayed a few times, and he staggered back a few steps. Pfft! He spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, Mocklin's eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. "It's time! Ron! Ron!" Room 302 shouted loudly. Aurora wanted to rush out, but the magic barrier seemed to have an invisible force that blocked her. Aurora desperately grabbed forward with both hands. Her eyes were wide open and filled with anxiety. She shouted loudly, "Ron, stop fighting, surrender." Unfortunately, Ron could no longer hear her. A sense of powerlessness swept over his body. His physical strength had been overdrawn to the limit. Finally, his thin and weak body fell backward. Eyelids, so heavy. I can't open my eyes. Ron's eyes moved and slowly closed. Room 787, let them win. I want a good sleep. Chapter 165. Oh! A long sigh came from the audience. Their faces were filled with regret. Ron, the expert in their hearts, was defeated just like that. However, in their hearts, they all thought that Ron was able to hold on for so long even though he was defeated. Looking at Ron's body lying on the ground, their eyes were filled with admiration. Among them, the happiest were the people who bet on dorm 787. This way, they would be able to make a huge profit. Shea also let out a sigh of relief. It's finally over. She looked at Ron lying on the ground and thought, this guy is getting stronger and stronger. If he were to recover to his peak state, it would be hard to say who would win in the end. Let's go back. There's nothing to see. Prats also felt that it was a pity. He shook his head and left. Emperor Nikolai also felt that there was nothing to see. He also got up and left. Mocklin looked at Ron's body lying on the ground. He didn't have a trace of joy. On the contrary, he stood there blankly, his mind blank. I miscalculated. I really miscalculated. That guy actually fainted just like that? Bastard, this is completely different from what I expected. The mission that the Holy See gave to Mocklin was to kill Ron. In the Balavax Academy, he had no chance. Firstly, Ron wasn't that easy to kill. Secondly, the Academy's instructors would stop him. Especially Vice Headmaster Debussy. He knew Mocklin's identity as the Holy Son. Naturally, he also guessed that Mocklin would make a move on Ron. His only chance was the ranking battle. In the ranking battle, he could kill Ron in Guangming. Afterwards, he could say that it was a mistake. In addition, Ron had fought with the Soaring Dragon Academy for an entire night. His vitality was greatly damaged, yet he still insisted on competing. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. Mocklin wanted to kill him directly, but he found that Ron was not easy to deal with. He could only exhaust his stamina bit by bit. Just as he was about to make a move, Ron actually fainted from exhaustion. What was this? How am I supposed to make a move when you fainted? Mocklin was so regretful that he almost wanted to tear his hair out. This was such a good opportunity. Just now, before he fell to the ground, he had rushed up to kill him as fast as he could, and nothing had happened. But now that he had fallen to the ground, what should he do now? Could it be that he had to kill him in front of everyone? No, I have to do it. Ron must die. Otherwise, I won't be able to answer to the Holy See. For a moment, Mocklin's mind was filled with thousands of thoughts. Finally, he steeled his heart, gritted his teeth, and strode towards Ron. Mocklin's abnormal behavior attracted Shea's attention. For some reason, Shea had a bad feeling. Mocklin, what are you doing? Mocklin did not answer. At this moment, his murderous intent was even stronger. Not only Shea, but everyone in dormitory 787 could feel it. The tutor who walked forward was about to announce the winner of dormitory 787. Seeing this, he opened his mouth wide and felt that Mocklin's abnormal behavior was strange. At this moment, Mocklin had already walked to Ron's side and reached out to lift him up. Ron's body seemed to have lost all feeling. He allowed Mocklin to lift him up and shake him continuously. The tutor felt that something was wrong and immediately shouted, "Mocklin, what are you doing? The competition is over. Put him down." Mocklin chuckled. "What do you mean the competition is over? Look, isn't he still standing?" At this moment, not only dormitory 787, but everyone present was stunned. The competition was over, and dormitory 787 had obtained the final victory. Only the tutor could go on stage to announce the result. At this juncture, what was Mocklin trying to do? Even Platts, who was about to leave, stopped in his tracks. He looked at Mocklin, his expression uncertain. He vaguely knew that Mocklin represented the Holy See and wanted to take Ron's life. However, he did not expect this Mocklin to make a move in front of everyone. At this time, Ron had already lost consciousness. Nikolai smiled. Interesting. It seems that this Mocklin's background is not simple. Aurora wanted to rush into the arena like a mad woman, but she was stopped by the magic barrier. She said to the night tutor, "You. Let me out." The others in dormitory 302 were also anxious and urged her. The tall night tutor scratched his head. But the competition is not over yet. According to the night tutor's understanding, the competition would only be considered over after the referee announced the result. However, although one side had fallen, the referee had not announced the result yet. Manny glared and said angrily, "What do you mean it's not over yet? Can't you see that Ron has already been knocked to the ground? Let us out." All right." The tutor thought for a moment and felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He quickly opened the magic barrier. "Mocklin, what are you trying to do? Are you crazy?" Shea was shocked and angry. Mocklin laughed. "Crazy? I'm not crazy. I just want to kill Ron." "Kill Ron? Why? Do you have a grudge against him?" Shea stared at him intently. "Yes, you wanted to kill him as soon as you came back. You planned this from the start, didn't you?" Mocklin smiled. "Yes, I can tell you that I'm a member of the Holy See. Haha, the Holy See wanted Ron's head, so I had no choice but to comply." As soon as he said this, everyone in dormitory 787 was shocked. They did not know that Mocklin had joined the Holy See. Below the stage, Heifels frowned slightly. "Mocklin actually joined the Holy See? He's a paladin. The Holy See must think highly of him." Heifels' wife, Misoya, said. "So you're a member of the Holy See?" Shea said fiercely. "It seems that your status in the Holy See is not low. You actually killed your own classmate for glory and wealth. You're too shameless." "So what?" Mocklin's eyes became crazy. "In order to achieve my goals, I've always been unscrupulous." Pornographic novels. Mocklin's gaze turned to Kadena, with a hint of fanatical infatuation. "Kadena, marry me. To tell you the truth, I've already become the holy son of the Holy See. In the future, a lot of wealth awaits me. Maybe I'll even become the Pope. As long as you marry me, my glory will be shared by you." "Tisk with you? Pope?" Kadena sneered. "Your actions only disgust me." Mocklin's eyes were filled with resentment. Why, I, Mocklin, have already become the holy son of the Holy See. I have strength and power. Kadena, why don't you like me?" Kadena smiled coldly. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Mocklin become vigilant. He turned his head and shouted, "Don't come over, or I'll kill him." The teacher was stunned and resentfully stopped. He had wanted to sneak an attack on Mocklin and save Ron, but he felt that the situation had gone out of control. Aurora and the others had already rushed up and said anxiously, You let go of him." Mocklin's hand tightened around Ron's throat as he shouted crazily, "Let me tell you, even if there's a powerhouse from the sacred domain here, there's no chance of saving him." Mocklin was telling the truth. He could crush Ron's neck in an instant. Even a powerhouse from the sacred domain wouldn't be able to save him in time, and even a priest wouldn't be able to save him. Just as Mocklin was distracted, Shea suddenly moved. She pounced on Mocklin. Mocklin shouted, "What are you trying to do? You stupid woman, don't you like me? You actually dare to attack me?" Shea was so angry that her whole body trembled. She wasn't angry at Mocklin, but she was angry at herself for being so blind that she actually fell in love with such a person. She tried her best to summon what little fighting aura she had left and fought with Mocklin. Mocklin resisted Shea's attack while laughing. "Shea, if you can persuade Kadena to marry me together with her, I'll also treat you well." "You're shameless." Shea was so angry that her face turned red. She attacked even harder. Although she didn't use any weapons, her fists that were infused with Do-Chi were also very aggressive. Kadena was also incomparably angry. She wanted to blast this shameless guy with an ice ball. Unfortunately, her magic power was exhausted, so she could only stand and stare. Shea. Ifrit had always been secretly in love with Shea. Unfortunately, Shea liked Mocklin. Now that the two of them had fallen out, he was secretly delighted. Finally, Shea's remaining Do-Chi was used up and she was easily pushed to the ground by Mocklin. She struggled to get up and pounced on Mocklin with bared fangs and brandished claws. Mocklin couldn't stand the woman going crazy. He pushed Ron forward and threatened, "If you come again, I'll kill him." Shea was shocked and immediately stopped. Mocklin's evil plan succeeded. He laughed and said, "Hee hee, Shea, I told you to stop and you stopped. You're so obedient. Don't tell me you like this guy? Look at how nervous you are." Hearing this, Shea's face turned red. Her plump chest heaved up and down. She gritted her teeth and said fiercely, "Mocklin, what do you want?" Looking at the face that was as beautiful as a peach blossom, Shea, who was resisting her shyness, charmingly stood there. Her pair of beautiful eyes couldn't help but look at Ron, who was being held hostage by him. Her face was full of concern, just like an anxious little wife waiting for her lover. Mocklin's words were originally unintentional, but in that instant, he seemed to understand something. Jealousy, anger, unwillingness, all kinds of emotions were tearing at his heart. Once upon a time, he was so close to Shea. He only needed to stretch out his finger, and she would throw herself into his arms. But now, he felt that he was so far away from Shea. He understood in his heart that Shea no longer loved him. She had fallen in love with Ron, whom he was holding hostage. Why would Shea take a fancy to this evil necromancer? What's so good about this guy? Mocklin's heart felt as if 10,000 ants were gnawing at it. At this time, he discovered that Shea was so beautiful and outstanding. Perhaps Shea couldn't compare to Kadena in terms of beauty, but her talent and strength far surpassed her. This time, Mocklin faintly felt that Shea's strength had greatly increased. She was close to the peak, similar to him. She could break through to the master level at any time. This point, Kadena, as a senior magician, was far inferior. She was still far from the master level. One must know that Shea was several years younger than him. However, Shea had always been low-key. She didn't want to overshadow him in front of everyone. With such a woman, what more could a man ask for? Chapter 166. Nothing much, I'm going to kill him, Mocklin said with a smile, looking at Shea's angry expression. Don't you like him? I'm going to kill him right in front of your face. If you kill him, you definitely won't be able to walk out of the Balarax Academy. Shea calmed down at this moment and said calmly. Ha ha ha. Mocklin laughed wildly. How could anything happen to me under Lord Wharton's protection? Besides, this is only a ranking battle, a battle between students. Death is very normal. Saying so, he turned to the tutor who was acting as the referee and sneered, We're still in the middle of the ranking battle, you have no right to stop me. The tutor hesitated. If you kill your opponent, you'll be disqualified. Mocklin laughed arrogantly. Do you think I care about the Academy's glory and prize money? What a joke. I'm now the Holy Son of the Holy Sea. What can't I want? I'll tell you the truth. I've come back this time for only one purpose, and that's to kill the ancient necromancer Ron. The Holy See will never allow an ancient necromancer to appear in this world, Mocklin said. For the sake of some empty religious belief? Shea said calmly, Mocklin, I've always known you to be an intelligent and far-sighted person. I didn't expect you to kill someone for such a senseless thing. Religious belief? I don't care about that. This is a mission given to me by the Holy See. At this point, Mocklin's eyes revealed a fanatical look. Maybe you don't know, but the Holy See places great importance on Ron. As long as I complete this mission, the benefits I'll reap are unimaginable. Because I'm from the Balarax Academy, I'm the most suitable candidate. Otherwise, do you think I could become the Holy Son without doing anything? Mocklin knew that even if he became the Holy Son, this position was not stable and could be erased at any time. He could only be recognized by the Holy See if he completed the mission. Otherwise, how could the position of the Holy Son fall to him when there were so many experts and geniuses in the Holy See? Looking at the calm and peaceful expression on the unconscious Ron's face in Mocklin's hand, Shea could not help but feel a pang of heartache. Perhaps Ron himself did not know that he was going to die in the next second. She took a deep breath and said something for the first time. Let him go. If you want to kill someone, kill me. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and their mouths formed a circle. Shea was actually using her life in exchange for Ron's. What was going on? Sister Shea. Kadena was extremely shocked. Sister Shea. She really fell in love with Ron? The Holy See wants Ron's life. What's the use of me killing you? When Mocklin heard this, his face suddenly became incomparably ferocious. At this moment, his heart was filled with jealousy. He gritted his teeth and said, "Since you care so much about this brat, then you can die with him." As he said this, Mocklin's hand suddenly tightened. As long as his 5 fingers closed into a fist, Ron's head would be broken with a crack. No. Shea's eyes suddenly became red. She threw herself forward without any regard for her life. At this moment, Aurora also rushed out of the magic barrier and madly rushed to the field. Die. Mocklin had a cruel smile on his face. His left hand suddenly tightened, just like a pornographic novel. A knight like Mocklin cultivated the strength of the body. With his strength, it was not too difficult for him to break the neck of an ordinary person with one hand. At the last moment, Ron's eyes suddenly opened, and his eyes shone brightly. However, it was too late. Ron's neck became thinner and thinner like a fried dough twist, and was broken into 2. Ron. Shea and Aurora let out heart-wrenching cries. In the end, they were still a step too late and saw the scene of Ron's head and body being separated. Dead, he's finally dead. Ha ha ha, the honor is mine. Sir Wharton, do you see? I've completed the task you gave me. Mocklin laughed wildly. At this moment, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why didn't he hear the sound of bones breaking? Why didn't he feel anything? Moreover, why did it feel like he had grabbed empty air? Ron's body gradually transformed into a cloud of black fog and directly dissipated. Mocklin stood there blankly, his brain turning into a paste. What was going on? Was Ron dead? Or was he not dead? At this moment, an old voice sounded in Mocklin's ear. So you've joined the Holy See. No wonder you've always wanted to kill me. I didn't know before, but now I know. Mocklin was shocked. He turned around and saw Ron's familiar face. He did not know when he had appeared behind him. Everyone was stunned. What the hell was going on? Wasn't Ron unconscious? How did he suddenly wake up and escape? Shea and Aurora were stunned at first, but when they saw Ron, their faces suddenly became wild with joy. Ron was not dead. He had woken up. You? How did you escape? Mocklin's face was full of shock. He took a step back. The fear of necromancy magic far exceeded the shock. He was a little flustered. Nothing. It's just a small Shadowma spell. The old voice replied. At this moment, Mocklin suddenly realized that Ron's aura was completely different. He was surrounded by a powerful black fog. His eyes had turned green, and his eyeballs could not be seen. He gave off a mysterious and terrifying feeling. Most importantly, this Ron's body emitted a heart-palpitating power. This feeling made Mocklin's body tremble involuntarily. The one controlling Ron's body now was Mocklin. He had no choice but to run out when he saw that Ron was in danger. Ron had fallen into a deep sleep due to exhaustion, so it was easy for Homelin to control his body. Why are you awake? Mocklin stuttered, his voice trembling. He instinctively felt that the Ron in front of him was very dangerous. Homelin said indifferently, as expected, "The Holy See still hasn't given up. They actually chased me all the way here. Since that's the case, I'll use this to welcome an old friend." As he spoke, Homelin's hands made a grabbing motion in the air. In an instant, a powerful soul force was released. A magic array appeared on the ground, as if it was connected to a spatial channel. A powerful aura seeped out from it, and the temperature of the entire duel arena dropped by several degrees. At this moment, an imposing figure gradually rose from the ground. This was a 2-meter-tall knight. He wore thick, heavy armor and rode on a huge skeletal horse. His drooping spear revealed traces of coldness. Sheya's mind exploded. This feeling was too familiar. She would never forget the feeling that made her tremble in fear for the rest of her life. This isn't Ron. This definitely isn't Ron. Sheya's body involuntarily trembled. Who is he? Why do I feel like I'm facing a powerhouse from the sacred domain? The Dark Knight. An undead creature that could only be summoned by a necromancer magus or above. At this moment, it stood in front of everyone in the duel arena. Under its cold mask, a faint green light shone. Thick, heavy armor covered its body. The heavy armor emitted mysterious runes. The huge skeletal horse beneath it was also covered in heavy armor, displaying its incomparably powerful defense. The Dark Knight didn't move. Just by standing there, it brought a great pressure to everyone. What is this thing? Pratt showed great interest. It feels like the thing that Ron summoned this time isn't simple. This knight-type undead creature wearing heavy armor is probably at the level of a master. The Emperor of the Nicola country also smiled and said, "It seems that ancient necromancy magic is really not simple. It can actually summon such a powerful and terrifying creature. I'm starting to look forward to it. How far will this child grow in the future? What will happen if necromancy magic breaks through the sacred domain?" Pratt's eyes also revealed a look of anticipation. The sacred domain, huh? That should be very powerful. I've taken some time these days to flip through some ancient document. Legend has it that the ancient era of 100,000 years ago was when necromancy magic was at its peak. Even powerful races like elves and orcs couldn't contend against it. I didn't believe it before, but now that I've seen true ancient necromancy magic, it seems that the legends aren't baseless after all. No. Impossible. Mocklin's teeth chattered. He was extremely terrified. Aren't necromancers only able to summon skeletons? How can such a terrifying undead creature appear? At this moment, a green light flashed in Ron's eyes. The Dark Knight moved. The skeletal horse raised its 4 hooves and charged towards Mocklin. Charge. It's actually a knight's battle technique, charge. Mocklin's heart trembled. He didn't expect this undead creature to be able to use a knight's battle technique. While he was in a daze, the Dark Knight had already charged in front of him, the spear in its hand piercing towards him. Mocklin gritted his teeth and raised his shield to meet the attack. Boom! With a loud sound, his body flew backwards and rolled a few times before falling to the ground. The Dark Knight's charging power was extremely strong. In addition, it had the strength of a master. It wasn't something that Mocklin could match. You can't even withstand a single blow. Ron revealed a trace of a smile. When this smile landed in the eyes of the people in room 787, it made their hair stand on end. Kadena was shocked. "Sister Sheya, is this the summoned knight you were talking about?" Sheya nodded. "That's right. I was defeated by this undead creature. It's too strong. It's not something that I can match up to." Mocklin crawled up, a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at Ron with intense hatred. Why did you suddenly become so strong? Ron coldly said, "You don't need to know. Now go to hell." Chapter 167. Mocklin wasn't willing to admit defeat. He once again rose up to fight back, using one divine combat skill after another. At this time, Mocklin seemed to have gone crazy. Divine light. Divine fire. Divine strike. Boom. Boom. Boom, the fierce battle began again. The battlefield was filled with bursts of explosions. White light and black fog intertwined with each other. Both sides had already exchanged dozens of moves. Kadena gently snuggled up to Shea. "Sister Shea, do you think Mocklin will win?" Shea shook her head. "He can't win. Ron's undead are too terrifying. Mocklin can't win." The battlefield was filled with smoke again. The audience cheered. They didn't think that Ron still had a trick up his sleeve. The strength of the summoned skeleton knight was too strong. Mocklin was beaten back again and again. "Ha ha! How about I show you this?" Ron smiled. He raised his bone staff high and chanted. At this time, his eyes flashed with a trace of sharpness. Frost Nova. The frozen aura continued to condense around Mocklin. Soon, Mocklin was frozen. At this time, he was horrified because he couldn't move. "Damn it, my body! I can't move my body!" In an instant, Mocklin's body was covered with ice. His whole body was frozen in an instant. Ron smiled, raised one hand, and softly spat out a word. "Explode!" Boom! A huge explosion resounded throughout the whole arena. A burst of bone-chilling cold air instantly filled the air, accompanied by the sound of the explosion. "Quick! Get out of the way!" Shea and the other people in dormitory 787 panicked. At this time, she felt a burst of cold air invading her body. She didn't have much do-chi to protect her body. Her movements also became slow. At this moment, the entire arena was covered in frost, and everyone's speed was slowed down. Mocklin's mouth gurgled as his teeth chattered uncontrollably. At this moment, he finally understood that the difference between his strength and Ron's was too great. A feeling of invincibility instantly occupied his heart, and at this moment, he was incomparably regretful. In the audience, as Frost Nova exploded, their emotions rose to the highest point. They cheered and cheered for Ron. At the same time, some people's focus shifted from Ron to necromancy magic. TSK, ancient necromancy magic is actually so powerful. It's like heaven and earth compared to the necromancy magic we know today. A student in the audience exclaimed in admiration. "Sigh. Why did I choose to be a mage? If I had known earlier, I would have become a necromancer." Another female student said with envy. She was deeply impressed by the charm of necromancy. A boy next to him questioned, "Even if ancient necromancy magic is so powerful, this Ron is only 16 years old. How can he be so powerful?" Mocklin crawled up with difficulty and shook his head. Looking at Ron's body, his vision blurred. At this moment, he felt something sweet in his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. He moved his body and discovered that his injuries were more serious than he had imagined. Mocklin's eyes flashed with a trace of fear. He couldn't continue fighting, or else he would die without a doubt. He suddenly shouted, "I'm not fighting anymore, I'm not fighting anymore, I surrender! I surrender! Surrender?" Hommelin couldn't help but stare blankly. At this moment, Mocklin had already taken the opportunity to flee back to room 787, afraid that Ron would continue to fight. Room 787 surrenders, room 302 wins. I announce that room 302 is the final champion of the Academy ranking tournament. Room 787 is the runner-up. The teacher wasted no time in announcing the results of the ranking tournament, as well as the champion and runner-up. Room 302 and the others couldn't believe their ears. "Champion, we've finally won the championship, standing at the peak of the academy. Is this a dream?" If this is a dream, don't wake up so quickly. Pornographic novels victory, we've finally won. Champion, we're the champions. Overwhelmed by joy, Dorm 302 hugged, jumped, and screamed, celebrating their final victory. In reality, the outcome of this match was highly controversial. For example, Ron was the first to fall. Should he have lost at that time? Secondly, Aurora and the others had voluntarily withdrawn from the battle and then rushed onto the competition stage. Did they violate the rules of the competition? However, these were not important. What was important was that Ron's powerful necromancy magic had convinced everyone. Everyone believed that room 302 should have won the championship. Mocklin stood up silently. At this moment, he seemed to have lost his soul. Not only had he lost the finals, but he couldn't kill Ron and complete the mission given to him by the Holy See. He looked at Ron with eyes full of hatred. He looked at the people of room 787, and without a word, turned and left. Ron, this is great, we've won. Aurora ran quickly to Ron, cheering, shouting, and jumping. The joy of victory made Aurora, who had always been strict, look like a crazy girl. Ron stood there in a daze. At this moment, his body suddenly went limp and fell into Aurora's arms. Aurora was shocked and supported him. Ron, what's wrong with you? After the competition, in Pratt's office. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Come in. Mr. Pratt's. Darbus opened the door and walked in. Pratt's was wearing a pair of glasses, and was concentrating on an ancient document about necromancy magic. Just as he was engrossed in it, he saw Linley enter, and asked without looking up, "What's the matter?" Darbus nodded. "There is indeed something." Pratt's reluctantly put down the book in his hands and took off his glasses. He rubbed his eyes and said, "Speak." Darbus took a deep breath. "It's about Mocklin's matter in the ranking competition. It has caused some trouble. I think he should be. Are you talking about firing?" Platz raised his head and asked. Darbus hesitated. "Yes. Did he ask to leave the academy? Or to graduate?" Pratt asked. "No, he didn't." Darbus answered honestly. The academy's graduation certificate couldn't be casually given out. According to the Balarax Academy's rules, only those who had reached the level of a master could graduate. If one left the academy with the strength of an advanced warrior, it would only be considered as graduation. In other words, it meant that their studies had ended. Those who couldn't even reach the advanced warrior level would have nothing and would have to pack their bags and leave. The Balarax Academy's graduation certificate was recognized throughout the continent. Of course, it was only recognized. One's own strength was needed to prove it. Mocklin's strength hadn't reached the level of graduation yet, so Pratt asked. Pratt thought for a while, but still shook his head. "That's not right." He paused and said, "Based on the Academy's rules and the Roland Empire's laws, students who kill each other due to fighting will be expelled from the Academy and transferred to the City Guards. However, mistakes in the ranking competition are an exception." Mocklin accepted the Holy See's orders. There is no doubt that he had the motive to kill the ancient necromancer Ron. However, this is only a motive and not a fact. Although his actions were inappropriate, I can't punish him according to the rules. Dabbs nodded and said with a smile, "Before this, I thought the same. I was just worried that he would harm Ron. Wouldn't it be better to eliminate this hidden danger?" Pratt smiled. "Don't worry. I don't think Mocklin has the ability to kill Ron. Today's battle has proven everything," Darbus nodded. "Dean, the Holy See won't let this matter rest. I think they will think of a new way to deal with Ron. Do we need to make some preparations?" Pratt pondered for a while. "It's fine. The Holy See won't start a conflict with us over Ron. Moreover, this is our territory. They can't do anything. They can only play tricks behind our backs, such as assassinations. Of course, as long as they don't provoke me openly, I won't care about them." Darbus nodded and hesitated for a while before asking, Dean Prats, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask. Ask away. You're protecting Ron, even at the expense of offending the Holy See. Do you have a motive? Darbus asked cautiously. Of course. Prats nodded and admitted openly. My motive is to let Ron teach the necromancy major, and make necromancy a profession. Today's finals have strengthened my determination. From today's match, Ron will break through to the master rank soon. When that happens, he will be the necromancy instructor of the Balarax Academy. Darbus was flabbergasted. Dean, is what you said true? But what benefits do we get from doing this? Some things don't need benefits. For example, necromancy magic. Pratt smiled as he waved the book in his hand. I took some time to look through the books on necromancy. I found that necromancy doesn't only have a glorious history, it also has a splendid civilization. Their cultivation methods are not something we can understand, but the experts of the same level are not inferior to the experts of any profession. I think that such a great profession shouldn't be lost in the long river of history. Darbus muttered, that seems to be something from the ancient continent. That's right. Prats nodded. That continent is called Omros. Pratt sighed. But it's strange. From the new continent, which is the Noah continent, there seems to be a gap in history. Everything related to necromancers has disappeared. It's as if necromancy never existed. This makes me very puzzled. It feels as if the powerful necromancy dynasty disappeared overnight. Darbus didn't speak. He sighed softly. Pratt smiled. So, I've decided to help Ron revive the necromancy major, if he has the ability. Darbus nodded. If that's the case, I'll keep an eye on him. There's no need for that. Prats waved his hand. I believe that he has the ability to deal with some problems. If he doesn't have the ability, then my efforts would have been in vain. So be it. Prats waved his hand. Go see if he's awake. If he's awake, tell him to come here. I want to see him. Chapter 168. After an unknown amount of time, in the contestant lounge, Ron slowly woke up. At this moment, he slowly opened his eyes. He's awake, Ron's awake. Aurora, who had been sitting beside Ron, immediately stood up and said in surprise. At this moment, the other people from room 302 also came over and looked at Ron with concern. What happened to me? Ron's head was still a little groggy as he shook his head and said, You defeated Mocklin and then fainted. Aurora said with a smile. Ron, you're too amazing. Manny praised sincerely, We're the champions. What, champions? This time it was Ron's turn to be surprised. He completely did not remember what happened after he fainted. Ah? You don't even know? Aurora looked at Ron strangely. You summoned a very powerful skeleton knight and then released a spell similar to an ice sphere to defeat Mocklin? What? You said the Black Knight? Ron's eyes widened. With my current strength, I'm still unable to summon a Black Knight. No way. This was clearly summoned by you and it defeated Mocklin in an instant. It's really too amazing. Fatty came over and said. Ron was still feeling strange when Homelin's voice sounded in his mind. The Black Knight was summoned by me, and that Holy Knight was also defeated by me. At that time, you were almost killed by him. When Ron heard this, he was shocked. Killed by him? Mocklin wanted to kill me? Why? Isn't killing prohibited in the ranking tournament? Moreover, I had already given up at that time. That Holy Knight only had one reason to kill you. He was a member of the Holy See and he killed you to complete the Vatican's mission. Homelin said. Ron suddenly realized that Mocklin was under the orders of the Holy See, which was why he showed such strong killing intent the first time they met. Thinking that Grandpa Homelin had saved him again, Ron said sincerely, Grandpa Homelin, thank you. Why are you thanking me? I'm still counting on you to find out the truth behind the disappearance of necromancy magic," Homelin said with a smile, his expression turning serious. "Ron, you have to be careful in the future, not that holy knight. His strength should not be a threat to you. You have to be careful of the Holy See. This action has already shown that they know your location and may be disadvantageous to you." When Ron heard this, he immediately became nervous. Then what should I do now? The most important thing now is to break through the master rank and become an archmage necromancer. Otherwise, don't talk about finding out the truth, you won't even be able to protect yourself. Homelin had been working hard to find out the truth behind the disappearance of necromancy magic, but during this period of time, he had not found anything. He sensitively felt that this level of secret was not so easy to find out. If everyone knew about it, it would not be a secret anymore. In order to come into contact with a higher level of secret, one had to have stronger strength. Ron nodded, "I will." At this time, he turned his attention to his roommates in room 302. Having just won the competition, everyone was in a good mood. The entire infirmary was filled with laughter and cheers. At this time, the door of the Academy's infirmary opened and Dabbs walked in with a face full of joy. "Vice Headmaster Dabbs, Vice Headmaster." Seeing Dabbs enter, everyone in room 302 stood up and greeted him. They still had to maintain the necessary respect for the Academy's leader. "You've woken up, Ron." Dabbs beamed. "I have to congratulate you for defeating the previous number 1 dorm, room 787, and becoming the overall champion of the Academy ranking tournament. From today onwards, room 302 will be the number 1 dorm in the Academy." Although everyone in room 302 had already known about this news, when they heard Vice Headmaster Dabbs' official announcement, they still cheered happily. "I was just lucky." Ron scratched his head and said modestly. Dabbs smiled and said, "I will give you the prize money for the Academy ranking tournament today. However, the dark gold weapons will have to wait for some time, which is around 10 days. They are all of superior attribute. Our enchanter specially made them for you. This is a special reward for the ranking tournament." When everyone heard this, their faces lit up with joy. Although they already had dark gold weapons in their hands, having one more would be good. Moreover, it was of superior attribute. It was even better than the ones they were using. They could even sell their old ones. Also, Dabbs smiled and continued to announce the good news. "Because you have won the ranking tournament, all of your occupations will automatically be transferred to the elite class. The Academy will give you a student apartment for free." Student apartment? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. They were both surprised and happy. Room 302 also had a student apartment? Just like Hefels, Shea, and the others, they would move from an ordinary student dorm into a student apartment? The student apartment was an independent building. Everyone had their own room and it was extremely luxurious. Due to the limited number of rooms, only the Academy's instructors and a few outstanding elites could stay in it. In the top 4, other than Ron's room in room 302, the other 3 were all staying in the student apartment. "That's great. We can finally enter the student apartment for once." Fatty laughed and said, "In the future, I will also have the ability to brag to my father. We are also people who have lived in the student apartment." Lantry and Karachi were so excited that their faces turned red. They never dreamed that they would be able to live in the student apartment. This could be considered as basking in Ron's glory. Otherwise, with their strength, it would be impossible for them to live in the student apartment for the rest of their lives. The entire ranking tournament was supported by Ron alone. Without Ron, they wouldn't even have the chance to advance. Ron was someone who had suffered a lot. He didn't have any opinion on whether to live in an ordinary dorm or a student apartment. However, when he saw Fatty and the others so happy, he smiled and said, "Thank you." "That's right, Vice President. How is that, Mocklin?" Aurora asked at this time. She remembered that Mocklin wanted to kill Ron, and her heart was filled with anger. Mocklin? He didn't do anything. Dabbs pretended not to understand. That guy wanted to kill Ron during the finals. He knew that Ron had already fainted, but he still didn't let him go. Why didn't the Academy expel such a scum? Aurora said angrily. Everyone in dorm 302 was also indignant. Dabbs smiled. But he didn't kill him. Seeing the unconvinced look on the faces of the people in dorm 302, Dabbs said earnestly, "There is a big difference between killing and not killing. If Ron were to die now, the Academy would punish him however they want. But now that there is no evidence, the Academy can't deal with it. Besides, the Academy has its own considerations. Moreover, killing by accident is different from killing on purpose. If it is dealt with like this, it will chill the hearts of many people. In the future, when the ranking tournament is held, those students will be timid." Aurora was still angry. "That guy did it on purpose." Dabbs shook his head. "Whether it was on purpose or not, it doesn't matter now. Anyway, Ron is fine now. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore." After saying that, he smiled and looked at Ron. "Ron, are you alright now?" Ron smiled. "I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Vice President." Dabbs nodded. "Very good, follow me." "Where are we going?" "The President wants to see you." Ron followed Dabbs to the President's office. Along the way, they passed by the duel arena and learned the results of the 3rd and 4th place matches from the students. The results were unexpected. Heffel's dorm, which was known as the hot favorite for 3rd place, actually lost to Hera's dorm 237. In the duel arena, a group of girls cheered, including the beautiful Princess Hera. Dabbs saw this scene and could not help but smile bitterly. He said to Ron, "Life is always full of surprises. Actually, I always thought that Heffel's would win, but in the end, Dabbs brought Ron to Pratt's. Just as he was about to knock on the door, a voice came from inside. "Ron, you're here, right? Come in." Dabbs opened the door and invited Ron in. He then left and gently closed the door. Pratt's study room had an antique feel to it. It was low-key and not luxurious, making one feel comfortable looking at it. "President Pratt's." Ron greeted and raised his head slightly. Pratt smiled and casually waved his hand, pointing to a large carved chair at the side. "Sit." "Thank you, President Pratt's." Ron sat down, feeling uneasy. He did not know why Pratt's, a powerhouse of the sacred domain, wanted to see him alone. It had to be known that being personally received by a powerhouse of the sacred domain was an honor, no matter where one went. Even Mocklin did not receive such treatment. "Ron, first of all, I have to congratulate you on becoming the champion of this year's ranking tournament. The final battle was simply too exciting. Although there were some noises, your performance was very good. I am very satisfied." Pratt went straight to the point as soon as he arrived. Bowing slightly, Ron said modestly, "You're too kind. It's all thanks to the Academy's teachings." Pratt laughed, but his expression suddenly changed as he said, "Ron, there's no need to be so hypocritical in front of me. I also know the level of the necromancy major in the Academy. Your necromancy instructor Vivian has no right to teach you necromancy magic." Ron's heart skipped a beat. He faintly felt that these words were hinting at something. "Speak. What is your goal in coming to the Balarax Academy?" Pratt's tone softened, but his tone was unquestionable. Ron hesitated for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, Pratt waved his hand and interrupted him. "Speak the truth. There's no need for lies. Although I can guess your goal in coming here, I'd rather hear it from your own mouth." It seemed that he had no choice but to speak. Ron took a deep breath and slowly said, "Dean Pratt, I won't hide it from you. The most important reason I came here is to enter the Balarax Academy's library." "Library?" Pratt was somewhat astonished. He originally thought that Ron would say that he came here to seek protection. He did not expect that Ron actually came here for the library. Chapter 169. Ron carefully chose his words. It's like this, Dean Prats. I was born in a small village in the west of the Holy Roman Empire. I haven't seen much of the world, and I don't know what the world is like. I didn't lie to you about that. My original intention of entering the Balarax Academy was to go to the Academy's library. Prats's face was tense, and he didn't speak. Ron paused and hesitated before saying, "Of course, there's another reason. I wanted to see if I could find the truth behind the disappearance of necromancy 100,000 years ago in the library." "Oh." Pratt smiled. "Did you find it?" Ron shook his head. "The collection of books in the Academy's library is indeed very rich, but I didn't find anything about necromancy." Pratt said, "In any library in the world, there are always some things that are kept secret. Mine is no exception." He pointed to the sheepskin scroll on the table. "This is an ancient scroll that records some things about necromancy. I took it out to have a look out of curiosity. Take a look. Documents like this can't be obtained through the proper channels." Ron walked over quickly and reached out to take the sheepskin scroll. He studied it carefully, not missing a single detail. From the surface of the scroll, it was indeed an ancient scroll that recorded some things about necromancy. However, what disappointed Ron was that it didn't record the reason for the disappearance of necromancy. Pratt said, "It's very strange. The ancient documents recorded necromancy, but after the end of the ancient era, necromancy disappeared. There were no more records of it. From the beginning of the first year of Noah, there was no trace of necromancy. For example, the continent of Noah is like a blank piece of paper. This blank piece of paper recorded many things, but this blank piece of paper missed out on necromancy." Pratt turned around abruptly and stared at Ron. "It has been 100,000 years since the beginning of the first year of Noah. Necromancy has long disappeared. I want to know about the pornographic novels. How did you learn about necromancy from 100,000 years ago?" Ron silently put down the scroll in his hand and slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry, Dean Pratt. I can't say." Pratt seemed to have expected his attitude. He smiled and said, "Even if you don't say it, I can guess it." He slowly took a step forward and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "In the ranking tournament finals, when you fought with Mocklin, the power that erupted afterwards wasn't your own, right?" Ron's body shook violently. He turned to look at Pratt with a look of disbelief. Pratt smiled. "You don't have to look at me like that. I was just guessing. The strength you displayed at that time was comparable to a Master Realm expert. Moreover, that aura was completely different from before. Therefore, I guess that it wasn't your strength. Moreover, there should be a soul in your body. This soul should be able to control your body to fight. Am I right?" Pratt's eyes were sharp. He guessed correctly. After hearing this, Ron fell into a rare silence. The other party had guessed everything correctly. What else could he say? However, what worried him was that Dean Pratt was pressuring him step by step. He didn't know how to deal with this. At this moment, Homelin's voice sounded in his mind. He said to him, "Ron, let me talk to him." "Ah, Grandpa Homelin, you." Ron was a little surprised. Grandpa Homelin actually took the initiative to appear. This was a very rare occurrence. Homelin smiled. "It's fine. I don't feel that he has any ill intentions. It's better to talk things out. Perhaps we can even talk about cooperation." Ron nodded. "All right." He then closed his eyes and handed over control of his body. At this moment, Ron's eyes suddenly opened. Light shot out from his eyes. An extremely cold aura rushed towards him. It was as if fear had come from the depths of hell. Pratt was stunned and became vigilant. "Ron, you..." At this moment, Ron slowly opened his mouth. However, his voice was that of an old man. "As you wish, I have come out." Pratt took a step back and sized up Ron. His eyes revealed a trace of astonishment. "Sacred domain expert?" "Sacred domain expert." Homelin smiled. It's been a long time since someone called me that. That's right, I am a sacred necromancer and also a sacred domain expert. My name is Homelin. How should I address you? Prats, Fire Mage Saint? Just call me Prats. Suddenly facing a person from 100,000 years ago, Prats's eyes revealed a trace of respect. Your Excellency should be from the ancient era 100,000 years ago. Perhaps I should call you Senior. Homelin nodded and sighed. Unknowingly, it's been 100,000 years. Prats boldly asked, May I ask how strong Senior is? Homelin smiled. Nothing much, just a little stronger than you. Peak of the sacred domain? Prats was shocked. He was only an advanced sacred domain expert. In the entire Noah continent, he could be considered an expert. There were only a few peak sacred domain experts in the entire Noah continent. Homelin smiled. Prats, you don't need to test me. Since I dared to show myself, I'm naturally not afraid of you playing any trick. Although Ron's body restricts my strength, I can still escape from you unscathed. Prats bowed slightly. Senior is too serious. How would this junior dare to be disrespectful to Senior? Homelin stood up and paced a few steps as if he was thinking of something. After a while, he turned around and smiled at Prats. Prats, perhaps we can make a deal. Deal? Prats's eyes widened. Homelin smiled and dropped a bomb that was enough to shock Prats. With Ron's current cultivation speed, I can guarantee that he'll be able to step into the sacred domain before the age of 50. Step into the sacred domain before the age of 50. Prats's eyelids twitched and he asked, So what? As long as Ron steps into the sacred domain, he can revive me. That way we'll be two sacred domain experts, Homelin said slowly. Prats listened quietly. When he heard that there were two sacred domain experts, his eyes lit up. Homelin glanced at Prats and said, If you can protect Ron, it's equivalent to us two sacred domain experts owing you a promise. Prats's brows gradually relaxed. This was a promise from two sacred domain experts, and one of them was at the pinnacle of the sacred domain. This was a huge favor. In other words, he could make these two sacred domain experts do anything as long as they could do it. On the Noah continent, the sacred domain experts kept their promises. Since the other party had said it, Prats was not afraid that he could not do it. As for 50 years, for a sacred domain expert, it was just the blink of an eye. After every profession stepped into the sacred domain, their lifespan would be greatly extended. A normal sacred domain expert could easily live up to 300 years old. Even Prats was only a little over 100 years old. Prats thought about it and felt that this deal was worth it. Protecting a person was too easy for a sacred domain expert. It was just that the Holy See would be a little troublesome. However, Prats did not live under the nose of the Holy See, so this was not a problem for him. Prats did not even have to do anything. As long as Ron stayed in Balavax and did not leave, no one would dare to cause trouble for him. All right. Prats agreed without hesitation. His tone changed as he said, But Sir Homelin, I have a condition. Homelin seemed to have expected this and nodded. What condition do you have? Just say it. From Homelin's point of view, it was normal for Prats to raise a condition. After all, he had only given an empty promise. He was surprised that Prats was willing to agree. Prats said, If Ron can successfully break through to the master rank, I hope that he can stay in the academy to teach necromancy. Homelin was startled. He did not expect Prats to raise such an idea. Prats looked at Homelin's expression and hurriedly added, Also, Sir Homelin, you can rest assured that I will not treat him unfairly. His salary will be 30% higher than that of an ordinary teacher. Homelin smiled. It seems that our goals are the same, he nodded. That's fine. I agree on his behalf. A smile finally appeared on Prats's face. Homelin had two ideas. The first was to find out the truth behind the disappearance of necromancy. The second was to revive necromancy and restore its former glory. If Ron became a teacher of the academy, he would spread the true knowledge of necromancy. This was a good thing. Homelin did not care who studied necromancy. The more people who studied it, the better. That way, necromancy could be revived faster. On the other hand, Prats cared about the benefits of the Balavax Academy. He saw the potential of necromancy. Perhaps he could use necromancy to suppress the other two academies. Knights were a profession that could be found anywhere. The Balavax Academy also had a knight class, but why did almost all the knights go to the Soaring Dragon Academy? The 3 words, Dragon Knight, already explained everything very well. Prats was full of expectations for Ron. In an abandoned house on the outskirts of Balavax City, Mocklin was trembling as he knelt on the ground, begging for forgiveness. Beside him stood a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes. His face was grave and stern, and his expression was dignified. One look and one could tell that he was an important person. What did you say? You actually failed? The one who spoke was the Holy See's Council of Elders, the Hall of Piety's Lord Wharton. He had disguised himself and sneaked into the Roland Empire's Balavax City to direct the operation against Ron. Unfortunately, he had failed. According to the rules of the Sacred Domain, a Sacred Domain expert was not allowed to step into another Sacred Domain's territory without prior notice. However, this rule was not followed very well. If the local Sacred Domain expert was allowed to pass, he would turn a blind eye. However, if someone caused trouble in his territory, he would have to stand up. The Roland Empire and the Holy Roman Empire were divided due to civil war. Their relationship could not be considered good, so Wharton could only secretly come. Mocklin's body trembled like a sieve. He hurriedly said, Lord Wharton, please calm down. I will definitely find a way to kill Ron. I promise, humph. Wharton coldly snorted. You better do as you say. Otherwise, you know the consequences. I personally promoted you to the position of Holy Son, so I can personally kick you out, yes. Yes, this little one understands. Mocklin trembled as he spoke. Get up, my holy son Mocklin, Wharton said sarcastically. Kneeling is not appropriate. Mocklin trembled as he got up. At this moment, he was like a frightened deer. He did not look like a holy son of the Holy See. Wharton shook his head as he watched. It seems that I can't count on him, Wharton thought. He sighed and looked at the Balavax Academy in the distance. A trace of helplessness rose in his heart. He planned to continue to take action against Ron, such as assassinating him. Unfortunately, he did not have time. The Pope of the Holy See sent 3 oracles in a day, asking him to return. Damn it! Wharton cursed and punched the wall, creating a large hole in it. At this moment, he wanted nothing more than to charge into the Balavax Academy and kill Ron, but he did not dare. Wharton clenched his fists in anger. Damn Prats, he actually doesn't listen to force or persuasion. There were 3 Sacred Domain powerhouses in Balavax, and Wharton felt that the 3 Sacred Domain powerhouses, including Prats, had already discovered his existence. It was just that they ignored him. Wharton was at a disadvantage. He did not dare to make a move unless he had absolute confidence in defeating Pratt. Wharton's expression was solemn. I have to report this to the Holy See as soon as possible and take action against him again. Otherwise, if this kid continues to grow, he will become a thorn in our side sooner or later. He sighed and no longer hesitated. He turned and left, ignoring Mocklin's calls. He was completely disappointed in Mocklin. Chapter 170. Early in the morning, a long bell broke the tranquility of the Balarax Academy. When the first ray of sunlight shone on the beds of the people in dorm 302, everyone had already put on their clothes and got out of bed. Get up! Karachi was like a happy bird as she excitedly knocked on the door of the boys' room in dorm 302. Ha, I just got up. Opening the door, Karachi saw Fatty at a glance. She couldn't help but blush and lower her head. "Wife, you're up so early? Come and see me." Fatty winked at him. Ever since their relationship had been made public, Lantry had been very dissatisfied. However, after Ron's persuasion, he was much better now. It seemed that his opposition wasn't that strong. The two of them were soon glued to each other, making others envious. Karachi rolled her eyes at him. "I came to see if Ron got up. Who wants to see you?" "Oh, you fell in love with someone else so soon." Fatty reached out and pinched her pretty face with a smile. "Did you take a fancy to my brother Ron?" As soon as Fatty said that, Ron, who was getting up, and Karachi, who was standing at the door, blushed. Ron's face was full of embarrassment. What was this? The two of you were flirting here and involved others. It was really lying down and getting shot. Manny walked out and spat at him. She said to Karachi, "Don't mind him. Nothing good comes out of this fat man's mouth. This guy dares to say anything." Aurora also packed her things. She put everything into the space bag, walked in, knocked on the door, and said with a dissatisfied tone, "Still messing around? Shouldn't we head out now?" Today was a big day for Dorm 302. As the #1 dorm in the academy, it was no longer suitable for them to live in the ordinary student dorms. They were moving to the senior student dorms. Today was the day they moved. Ron responded, packed his simple luggage, and walked out of the hall. Seeing Aurora, he gently walked up and took her hand. Aurora blushed. "Don't, so many people are watching." Ron smiled and pointed at Fatty and Karachi. "What about them?" Aurora looked up and saw Fatty and Karachi holding hands and sticking to each other. Beside them was Lantry, who had a gloomy expression. Aurora's face was burning red, and her expression was a little bashful. However, she didn't let go of Ron's hand. Although the two of them had already confirmed their relationship, it was still limited to holding hands. Ron, this coward, had not even hugged Aurora's slender waist. "All right. Let's go," Aurora said. The 7 people from room 302 walked out of the door and looked back at room 302. They had lived here for a long time, some for 2 or 3 years. This was the place where they had once lived. Ron sighed in his heart. Although his days in room 302 were dull, they were very fulfilling. He was a little reluctant to leave. Boss Ron, the 7 of them walked through the corridor and down the stairs. Along the way, they saw many familiar students. Many of them looked at Ron with reverence in their eyes. Fatty could be considered a celebrity here. He smiled and kept greeting everyone. "Second, fifth brother, are you moving?" "Hee, that's right. Brothers, if you have time, come to the apartment." Fatty was so excited that he danced with joy. His proud expression was clearly written on his face. Those students looked at the high-spirited people of room 302 with envy in their eyes. They couldn't help but whisper, "They are room 302, the #1 team in the academy ranking tournament." A student said, "Wow. #1 in the academy, so powerful?" Another student obviously didn't care about what was going on outside. He looked at them and asked curiously, "But it seems like there are a few among them who are still at the trainee level. Such a team is actually #1 in the academy. Are you kidding me? Who has the time to joke with you?" That student said solemnly, "Do you see that person in front?" "Yes, the short and very thin one. He is Ron, the Ron who is ranked first in the academy. It can be said that the victory of the ranking battle was single-handedly supported by him." "Wow, so powerful? What's his profession?" Another student's eyes were wide open. "He's a necromancer," that student said proudly. #yen%, #yen. Living in a luxurious student apartment wasn't a pornographic novel. It wasn't anything special. Although there were many poor people in Balavak's academy, there were also many rich people. Most of them were descendants of noble families, who couldn't afford to live in an apartment. In fact, many rich students rented luxurious apartments outside of the academy. There were people in Balavax who specifically provided them. However, living in a luxurious apartment in the academy was different. It represented one's identity, strength, and status. It represented the academy's recognition of the students. The significance of this wasn't something that money alone could compare to. What surprised everyone was that the #1 dormitory in the academy didn't live up to its name. There were only 7 people, and 3 of them were at the trainee level. Trainees were able to live in an apartment that only the elites could live in. This was extremely rare in the history of the Balavax Academy. It could even be said that there was no such thing. All of this was thanks to Ron. Walking along the corridor and crossing the main road, they arrived in front of a 2-story building with an independent courtyard. The building was designed like a castle, just a little smaller. The people of dorm 302 stood in front of the apartment, their eyes shining. "This is our apartment?" Karachi's face was full of excitement. She jumped and clapped her hands. "If Vice Principal Dabbs is right, this should be it," Aurora said after some thought. "We have the key. Won't we know once we open the door?" Fatty said with a smile, waving the key in his hand. "That's true. Why are we guessing here?" Manny said with a smile. The group walked to the door of the student apartment. Fatty took out the key. At this time, they were surprised to find that the door was already open. "The door is already open? Did we go to the wrong room?" Fatty said in surprise. He looked up and down at the castle-like apartment. He was puzzled. "This is it, there's no mistake. It could be the academy's cleaning servants." Rum, who had been silent all this time, said, "I heard that the academy hires people to clean these high-class apartments. It doesn't matter if it is or not. Let's go in and take a look. Even if it is really a mistake, we can just say sorry," Ron said after some thought. "That's true." Fatty smiled and reached out to open the door. At this time, a sudden change occurred. Splash! A plate of water was poured down on Fatty's head, drenching him completely. Even the plate was placed on top of his head. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? "Who is it? Whose prank is it? Get out here!" Fatty quickly realized that he had been tricked. He picked up the plate and smashed it on the ground, then roared loudly. Ever since he became one of the bosses of the Skull Party, Fatty hadn't been angered like this for a long time. Kakik! A crisp sound came from the room. At this time, a woman in luxurious clothes walked out. She was holding her stomach and laughing non-stop. "I thought someone was tricked. It's you, Fatty. I didn't think that after not seeing you for so long, you're still as stupid as before. Didn't anyone tell you to be careful before entering? It's you." When they saw this person, except for Ron and Rum, everyone in room 302 changed their expressions and said in unison. Ron's gaze focused. At this time, he clearly saw the woman who tricked Fatty. This woman wasn't old. She was wearing a gorgeous white dress. She had a head of golden curly hair and azure blue eyes. Her appearance was beautiful and her facial features were extremely delicate. In terms of beauty, she wasn't inferior to Shea. She had a trace of a mischievous smile on her face as she looked at everyone. Facing Fatty's angry gaze, she curled her lips indifferently. Ron was a bit puzzled and asked, "You guys know each other?" Aurora coldly snorted. She didn't have a good impression of this woman. "She's called Angel. She's the princess of the Roland Empire's royal family. She once lived in our dormitory for a period of time." "Oh," Ron responded. Looking at their nervous expressions, they probably didn't have a good impression of this woman. It was no wonder that no one had a good impression of a woman who tricked them as soon as she came back. Her? And a royal princess? Ron couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Aurora frowned and asked, "Why did you come back? And why did you come here?" A smile appeared on Angel's face. "I'm from dorm 302. Why can't I come back? Let me tell you, Ben. If the princess likes to come back, then come back. If she doesn't like to come back, then don't come back. Hee hee, seeing that you guys got first place in the ranking tournament and even got the best student dormitory, this princess came back. How about it? Karachi angrily glared at Angel. Her heart ached as she reached out to wipe away the water on Fatty's face. So what if you're from dorm 302? You're not welcome here. Get out. Angel's face was filled with coldness. Yo, Karachi, I haven't seen you for a few days and you're already so cocky? Is it because I can't do anything to you just because you got the best dormitory in the academy? Looking at how your strength hasn't improved at all, could it be that you've already forgotten about that hair? A trace of fear appeared on Karachi's face. She would never forget how Angel used fire magic to burn her hair. Because of this, her brother, Lantry, was so angry that he fought with her. Unfortunately, the two siblings were not her opponent. In the end, the matter was settled with Aurora's intervention. However, even Aurora couldn't do anything to her. Angel's strength was very strong. She already had the strength of a senior magician. However, she liked to play tricks on others the most, and it was quite excessive. The ones she played tricks on the most were Fatty, Lantry, and his sister. The three of them dared to be angry with Angel, but they didn't dare to say anything. Firstly, they couldn't beat her. Secondly, Angel was the princess of the Roland Empire's royal family, His Majesty Nikolai's most beloved daughter. No one could do anything to her. However, Angel dared to play tricks on Fatty and the other two, but she didn't dare to provoke Aurora. It must be known that Aurora was the strongest archer in the entire academy, and archers had the title of magician killer, which just happened to restrain her. This made her restrain herself a little when dealing with Aurora. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.